we'll get started. We're waiting on our board secretary, Mrs. Federico, but we'll get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the August 28th business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. It's the first meeting we've had since July, so we have a lot to cover tonight. I just wanted, before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I wanted to ask everybody to please, after the pledge, remain standing for a moment of silence for Mike Nelson, who is a beloved physical therapist here in Milford, devoted 40 years to working with children. Half of those years were here in Milford. So please keep him, his family, and his colleagues who are missing him in your thoughts and prayers over the next few days. And also, please just keep the people in Texas in your good thoughts. It's really a lot of devastation down there. So if we could please stand for the pledge in a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn the meeting over to Dr. Fieser for staff recognition.
Thank you, Mrs. Glennon. Welcome back to the board members. We had a great start today, which I'll fill you in a little bit more about, but it's really delighted that we're underway. So it's my distinct honor this evening to introduce you to 5 of our new administrators. I just want to clarify, none of these positions are new positions. We had 3 retirements, if you remember, in the fall. Sharon Kleshnick, Kathy Williams, and also Pat Drew, all retired, and so we replaced them, and some of them moved from positions within the district to those which opened up other positions, etc. But we're delighted that we have these folks joining us, and so I'm going to introduce each of them. You've already gotten a little bio on each of them, but I'll just refresh your memory just a little. And then what I'm going to do is introduce all of them and then ask them if they would come and shake your hand, so at least you can maybe put a face with the name. So I'm going to begin, this is all alphabetical, with Shannon Carlson. You want to stand, Shannon? So Shannon, you all know, Shannon is now the principal of East Shore Middle School, first day on the job in her new school. And Shannon was an assistant principal at Harborside before stepping into the role of instructional supervisor for district improvement, which she was in that position for 3 solid years. And then when Kathy Williams retired, she applied for the position, was selected, and we're thrilled that she's there. So this is Shannon. You all know her, but now you know her as a principal. Bonnie Eaton's brand new administrator, first day at J.F. Kennedy. She actually started out as a 5th grade teacher here in Milford. She was at Simon Lake, followed by Pumpkin Delight, and then she became the teacher leader at Live Oaks and was in that position for 2 years. 2 years, Bonnie, and was selected as the principal of Kennedy School, and so this was her first day officially in her school with her kids. We started, I know, earlier in August. Sarah Gallipoli, who is our new supervisor of special education, primarily in the middle school, but with some other duties beyond the middle school. If you remember, Sharon Kleshnick retired. Sarah actually was in the Milford schools for a number of years in a number of different roles, and when she departed for a few years, which I'll speak about in a second, she had been the teacher leader in special education, real expertise in reading, and worked with a number of staff in a number of schools. She then went to Hampton for 2 years and served as a supervisor, for a middle and high school special education. And then we brought Sarah back. So we're thrilled to have her back. And you've been here since July, correct? We also have Mike Hodder, who many of you know. Some of you maybe had your sons and daughters in his class. Mike was initially a math teacher at Law High School. He then became the athletic director and was athletic director for 4 years?
3 years.
3 years. And then decided he wanted to go back into the classroom and hoped somewhere down the road that he would be able to become a school leader. And so Mike was selected as the assistant principal at Lowell High School, again replacing Pat Drew, and we're thrilled that Mike is in the position. And then lastly, you all know Sean Smith, former principal at John F. Kennedy, where he was for 11 years. Sean has spent his entire career in Milford. And when the position of instructional supervisor for district improvement opened up because Shannon moved over to East Shore Middle School, Sean applied and was selected for that position, and we're thrilled that Sean is in that role. So some moving within the district and then bringing Sarah back, and we think we have a great group that, again, these positions were all in place, but they're bringing some new life, new blood, new challenges to me, so that's good stuff. So you all come and now meet the board members. That would be great.
Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
All set? All set. All right, now we move on to student reports. We are very lucky that we have, every year, we have 2 students from Foreign and 2 students from Jonathan Law that come and report to us at every board business meeting. And so tonight we have Shauna Winters and Michael McCarver from Jonathan Law. They won the coin toss, so they're going to go second. Coin toss, and then Tanisha and Ashvac and Max Chang from Foreign, who are going to go first tonight. So welcome, and have a stand at the podium, and you can read your report to us. They lost the coin toss. Yes.
The joke's on Mom because if you won the coin toss, you would have chose first anyways. So hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Max Chang. I'm a senior this year at Foreign High School.
I'm Khadija Ashfaq, I'm also a senior.
We're really excited to be presenting to the Board of Education tonight. We had a really nice first day of school, and we're looking forward to presenting for the rest of the Board of Education.
Max, may I interrupt and just ask you to just lift your voice some?
Oh,
so
yeah.
we can hear better. Thank you.
Okay, so on Wednesday, August 23rd of 2017, the Foreign High School Marching Band presented its preview show to a crowd of approximately 200 fans. This was the culmination of 45 hours of marching and musical rehearsals. The show this year is titled The 70s Show, and features the musical selections Lila, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, YMCA, and Dream On. Field leadership is being provided by Senior Band President Nate Garofano and Senior Band Vice President Nick Beria. The Foreign Band is the largest it has been, with 82 members. We are especially proud to welcome 34 freshmen to the group this year. The band will make its official debut at the football game on September 8th.
The Kickstart program for selected incoming freshmen ran from Friday, August 18th to Tuesday, August 22nd. The program was designed for selected incoming freshmen to get a kickstart to their school year by meeting and developing relationships with teachers, upperclassmen students, guidance counselors, administration, and additional support staff and facility in the building. In addition to meeting these key individuals, the students took a tour of the building, learned firsthand how the rotating schedule works, walked their schedule, learned how to use the printers, and were able to have many of their questions answered about the transition to high school.
Ninth grade orientation on August 23rd was a success. The Natural Helpers organized the event, which included campus tours, time with school counselors, assistants, opening lockers, and fun bonding activities. Foreign open house is scheduled for September 12th at 6 o'clock. We are very excited to welcome parents to Foreign to show them all of the tremendous opportunities that our school has to offer.
Okay, so we have some news from the guidance department. Our senior postgraduate planning night is on Monday, September 18th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Counselors will review the college application process and have a panel of current college admission representatives to share tips from their side of the desk and answer questions from attendees. Freshman parent orientation night is on Thursday, September 28th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Counselors will go over important information for 9th grade parents, including community service, clubs, sports, advanced placement opportunities, and tips for 9th grade success. Current students will be sharing their advice from their perspectives. There are 46 college representatives visits scheduled, with more being added as the school year begins. Scholarships are added to the website as we receive them as well.
The Foreign Innovative Thinkers Club is busy preparing for our first Pep Rally of the year. Pep Rallies at Foreign are a fun tradition and provide students another opportunity to show their strong school spirit.
Practices have begun for all of our fall sports, and our opening day games are right around the corner. Our football team will be at home on Friday, September 8th at 7 p.m. against Wilbercross High School. Our volleyball team will start their season down in Stanford at the 2nd Annual Stanford Volleyball Festival on September 8th and 9th. Our boys and girls soccer teams open their seasons against Amity and Wilbercross. The boys and girls cross-country teams will compete in the Wyndham Invitational on Saturday, September 9th. Our girls swim team opens up their season against Cheshire on September 11th in Cheshire. The Foreign Athletic Department hopes that you can find some free time in your busy schedules and attend some of our many sporting events.
Thank you for all that you do for Milford students. We look forward to speaking with you every month.
Thank you. Next up, Jonathan Law.
Hi, I'm Shauna Winters. I'm a senior at law.
I'm Mike McArdle, also a senior at law.
In athletics, fall practice is underway and all the excitement is building up for our sports teams: football, girls and boys soccer, volleyball, girls swimming, and cross country. We invite you all to join us and show your love and pride by coming to our game. Our football season opener is on September 8th against Sheehan High School. Home opener is September 15th against Bethel. All other sports begin the week of September 11th, and law hosts foreign volleyball on September 11th.
All right. In recent activities, band camp had another successful week, and we are now getting ready for our rollout, our new marching band halftime routine. Our Key Club and many other service groups spent the day at the Oyster Fest giving back to our community, and our freshman orientation took place on Friday, August 25th. We had 223 freshmen, plus their parents join us for a welcome lunch donated by our friends at Subway and for a presentation by Mr. Thompson. Students were helped by the Johnson Law Difference Makers, our upperclassmen, as they facilitated group discussions, led tours, reviewed schedules, and while that was going on, Mr. Thompson met with parents. The day ended for everyone at our activity fair, which brought out clubs and teams so that our newest law amazings can see all the incredible opportunities that they can get involved in.
Opening day, which was today. On Thursday and Friday of last week, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Marco, and Mr. Hoggett welcomed the faculty back for what promises to be a great school year. Jonathan Law students were greeted at every entrance today by teachers where there was literally a red carpet to welcome for all of us. In typical law fashion, we felt welcomed and excited by the enthusiasm and energy of our teachers. We welcomed 242 freshmen in the auditorium as they met with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Marco, Mr. Hoggett, Mr. Agini, and Officer Boltos, and their advisors. A senior meeting was held, and it was a great kickoff to the upcoming year. Mr. Thompson thanked us for being leaders in the school and for setting the tone and making a difference at our school. We attended our A-Day classes and our advisory meetings, and tomorrow our B-Day will also begin an advisory, and Mr. Thompson will welcome the sophomore and junior classes at their respective meetings.
So in upcoming events, on September 6th, our first PTA One Voice meeting will take place in the Media Center at 7 p.m. We have a fundraiser on Saturday, September 9th. Jonathan Law is sponsoring a car wash to raise money for the 9/11 Tribute Center. And also, our back-to-school night for parents is September 12th, beginning at 6 p.m. Mr. Thompson will hold a meeting for all freshman parents in the auditorium, followed at 6:30 with parents attending all classes on their child's schedule. That's about it.
Thank you very much.
Where's your car wash? And when?
Jewelers, automotive, on Bridgeport Ave.
Yep. And
When?
September 9th. 12 to 2. 12 to 2.
all right, great. See you next month. If you guys, if you wish to leave, to go to, well, you probably don't have any homework yet, huh? But you don't have to sit for the whole meeting. You're welcome to depart if you'd like. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. I have my public comment statement to read first. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with Milford Public Schools. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Please be advised that our meetings are televised live on Channel 78 on Cablevision. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record before you begin. So is there anybody who would like to address the board this evening? No one. Okay, then no public comment. We will move on to the chair's report. I just want to remind the board that on September 18th, we are having a workshop on developing targets for the priorities and goals. And we are back to our regular schedule now of our business meeting on the second Monday and our committee of the whole meeting on the fourth Monday of each month. Just a reminder that we don't have December, June, July, August, we don't have a committee of the whole meeting. The convocation was a great success. I attended and spoke, gave some opening remarks on behalf of the board. I think Dr. Fusar is going to talk a little bit about the first day of school. So are there any liaison reports at this time? Yes, Dr. Gregory.
This past Tuesday, the Milford Education Foundation had an event with teachers that went extremely well. Annalise Spaziano and Jennifer Ju planned and conducted an engaging event, and the Milford Education Foundation is interested in ways to sustain and support and grow this mindfulness type event.
So the event was on mindfulness. Okay, any other liaison reports?
The building committee met, but since we're having an update, I'll
Okay.
let that go.
All right, thank you. Any other liaison reports? Nothing from ACES yet?
No.
All right.
ACES doesn't meet, does
Okay.
not meet during the summer.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Listerman. All right, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Glennon. And before I move into the first agenda item, I just want to say, since it was the first day of school, that it went extremely well from everything that we heard from those out in the buildings. So, for example, if you walked into the buildings, they were just spanking clean. Floors completely waxed, classrooms cleaned, etc. I can't tell you how many buildings I was in today where teachers and principals commented on the condition of the buildings. Food service lunches went extremely well. We were in many cafeterias. Mayor Blake, we went to 8 buildings today, again, that all went very smoothly. We had the new start times today for the middle school and the elementary schools. They went on without a hitch, as well as the dismissals. I didn't get a single phone call of complaint from any parents. So that we were really pleased about. Transportation went without a hitch as well, which is not always the case, and today went marvelously. And again, that was with the new start time. So we're really thrilled. It's great now that all the elementaries are beginning at the same time. It's just really good. So. All the buildings were visited because I know that Mr. Burt and Ms. Swift and Mrs. Kapasna were in various buildings today as well. So and I'll make sure that I get out to the other buildings. But it was just a great start. There was tremendous enthusiasm. Kids were excited, and some kids maybe we're not, but the teachers are genuinely excited, and I think it's a great start. So more to come at the next board meeting. So with that, we'll begin the superintendent's report, and our first item on the agenda is an update on the West Shore Middle School project. We thought it would be really important for the board as well as the public to hear from the people who really have the most expertise around the project to be able to provide that update and answer any questions that you have. So with that, I know there's maps being passed out, and Mr. Riccitelli, you're going to begin after we pass out the maps?
Would you like us to just send them down? Sure. Not that we can see what's up there. I can't. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Griffin, can you make the screen bigger again like it was?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Fieser, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. As you know, we have a major renovation and expansion project ongoing at West Shore Middle School. So we wanted to bring you up to date as to where we are. As you know, and we'll talk about this further, the decision that was made to delay the start of school at West Shore until Thursday of this week. So they're going to be starting 3 days late, but we'll get into the decision-making process and how we came to that conclusion, and give you a little bit of background of where we are now and where we'll be going over the next few weeks, months, and till the end of the project. With me tonight, I want to introduce our team. From the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee is Matt Woods, the chairman. We all know Matt. From the architectural firm Silver Petroselli is Bill Silver, who's here. The general contractor on the job is LaRosa, and Jim LaRosa, the president of LaRosa Construction, is here tonight. And of course, you know our principal and assistant principal, Paul Cavana and Ken Hayes. So we're gonna give you some of the details briefly, and then everyone is here to answer any questions that you have. And so just to refresh your memory, I know you know this, but the expansion project is a $19.5 million project. It includes, and it's going to be absolutely tremendous when it's done, but it includes a dedicated music and chorus area, an expansion of the gym with an enhanced stage area, which West Shore doesn't have up until now. A complete overhaul of the media center, which will be the hub of the learning and the education at West Shore. All new lavatories, very important. Enhanced science classrooms with lab facilities, a renovated front office, all new windows and roof, and general improvements, upgrades, and code compliance throughout the building. In addition to turnaround areas and traffic pattern improvements and security enhancements are going into the building. So it's a huge project. It was always anticipated that this project would span two school years, not 2 full school years, but would go over 2 school years. Similar to all of our projects in Milford, and Matt Woods will talk a little bit more about that, how in the past how we've handled these kinds of projects. The project, we began, the Board of Aldermen approved funding for the design and plan back in January of 2015. The building committee, and as you know from what we talked about, the capital improvement plan, projects that receive state reimbursement are handled by a committee that the Board of Aldermen designates, and that's the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee. They take the project from start to finish, and then they turn it back to the Board of Education for our use. You have 2 representatives on the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee, Mrs. Federico and Mrs. Krasinski, who attend all the meetings and bring back to you what's going on at the meetings. So The planning and design phase of the project took place much throughout the 2015-2016 school year. Bidding took place in the fall of 2016, last fall, and the project was fully funded by the Board of Aldermen this past January. After the bids were opened, Permanent Schools Facilities Building Committee went through those, through the bids thoroughly, and awarded the project to the ROSA Construction. And that took place in around February or March this past year, of this year, 2017. And so the project started officially in March while school was in session. Obviously not too many things can get done, but internal work was being done while the students were in school. And I have to emphasize that throughout this process, it's planned for what in the industry is called phasing, but it's when you do construction when children are in school, which is very common. There's certain things that have to be done. There has to be cutoffs so the students can't walk into the construction areas and things like that. Noise, things that are going to be noisy are not done during the school day, things like that. And all of this is done with the oversight of the Fire Marshal's office and the Building Inspector's office. So, fast forward to the end of school. As soon as students get out this year, major construction starts taking place. And about the middle of July, about 6 weeks ago, we started having weekly meetings with the whole team, with the architects, the contractors, Matt Woods, the principal and assistant principal, all of the code agencies in Milford, the Fire Marshal's office and the building office, because we knew there's a tight frame of work that needs to get done in a short period of time over the summer, and then the contractor has to turn the school back to us to start school. And we knew that the school, there's the major portion of the work that's being done is on well, this doesn't show up on that, but it's the red area. That's the front piece. That's all new construction. That's the expansion piece of the project, and that was never contemplated to be turned over to us. In fact, that will go to we're anticipating the spring, to sometime in the spring that piece of the project will be done. But the rest of the school is going to be usable for us during this year. So anyway, when we got into mid-July or so, there was a tremendous amount of work that needed to be done. So we called everybody together, and I have to say up front that we were worried at what we were seeing, and that how would we get this all done by the start of school and be able to start and have a safe environment and have a clean environment and an environment where teachers can teach and kids can learn. So we were concerned. We called everybody in. I have to tell you that Jim LaRosa and his team responded to us and responded to us in a big way. They got it done so that we're at the point where we're able to open next week. We will have our temporary CO in place so that all of the codes that need to be signed off on will be signed off on, and we'll be ready to go. I'll just talk for a second because this came up. We would be irresponsible of us in administration not to have planned for the worst case scenario if we could not open at West Shore. And so we had probably about 6 different contingency plans in place, detailed plans of what we would do, and those included, obviously, alternative sites. About 3 weeks ago, when we met at the school, we determined that we had enough faith in the contractor, in consultation with the Fire Marshal's office and the building office here. We had enough faith that this project was going to be ready for us to move kids into, again, in that safe, clean, educationally conducive environment. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask Paul Cavanna to talk to you about why it was important for us to open all under one roof with all of the students, because some of our alternative plans would have been having different grade levels in different locations, and why that wasn't the best scenario for us, and why what we're moving toward to open on Thursday is the best scenario for us. And Paul will talk about the number of classrooms he needed, and we have those number of classrooms he needs in order to operate his school and operate it with his teachers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Woods. Matt, if you could just talk a little bit about the past projects and how we do these types of phasing projects, and how this is very common, the way that we do the construction here.
Thank you, Jim. I've been chairman of the Permanent School Facility Building Committee since November 1989. Alberta Jago was the mayor. Fred Listman was chairman of the board of Alderman, and George Vitelli was superintendent. I look around at the banners you got on the wall here, and since then, the building committee has worked on every single one of the schools, and in some cases, multiple projects. This is the third project that we've done at West Shore. And school construction is like road construction, and it's different. It's like road construction in that they have to keep the highway open and functioning as a highway at all times while they're building the new highway or the new bridge or the new tunnel, whatever it is. It'd be much easier to simply close the highway and work on the highway. The job could be done probably twice as fast or 3 times as fast. Same thing with schools. If we had the luxury of moving all the students to another location, we could complete the project much faster. Unlike road construction, which if it takes 3 months or 2 months or 6 months, it doesn't really matter. With schools, it does matter because of the school calendar. And there are certain deadlines that we have to meet, including when school opens. We did a lot of hazardous material abatement work that has to be done when no one is in the school. Luckily, that's all taken care of. And so we have to function with the principal. And under our contract with the contractor, the principal has the right to shut the project down if it interferes with the educational process. It's happened, I think, once at East Shore with roofing, if the smell starts interfering with students. So far, since the bulk of the work started after school got out, we haven't had that problem. And I don't anticipate we'll have that problem now because the work areas in the school are totally segregated from where the students are, both inside and outside. So what we're hoping is that you see the areas in purple. Those are basically been turned over. The 25 classrooms have been cleaned and turned over to the teachers. There are 12 classrooms in the 2-story addition, and you can't see the second floor, where we ran into a problem that set us back. That I don't know if anyone's seen the school, but there is Tyvek and plywood and whatever all on one wall, because we're going to have to go back to those areas once the 5 sort of light brown classrooms next to media center finished. Those will be our swing spaces, so we can move students from the 1st and 2nd floor classrooms on the east wing into the swing classrooms while we complete the window replacement on those classrooms. But I want to emphasize that the classrooms are code compliant, they're safe, they don't look all that good, but we're just going to have to put up with that for another few weeks. So we anticipate that the administrative office addition will be done the first week in October. The media center will be functioning by the end of October. Of course, as Jim said, the gym stage, the music wing will be completed starting after December. The computer room, art room, and those areas will be done in March or early April. The staging in the outfield and the baseball field will be done in the spring, and then the plywood windows on both floors will be finished shortly. when we awarded the contract to La Rosa, along with the other bidders, they estimated it was a 600-day project. We expect at this point the project to be done probably by the late spring, maybe 60 or 70 days early. Although there are always punch list items that take weeks or months to completely finish, so the job is 100%. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Okay, I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to, if you don't mind.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Well, I had a simple question. This says turnover of the area 115, and you're talking about it being completed in the spring.
Which area are you talking about?
The area in orange.
Red.
Red.
Reddish orange. Gym and music.
Gym and music.
Jim, maybe Jim LaRosa can give us the time frame.
The area we're referring to in the spring is the 2 art rooms. Basically right here, these 2 rooms here.
Okay.
Once we turn over this area, we then need to take swing space and move them somewhere else, and then do that work once we turn over this area. So the gym area, the band rooms, music rooms, that's all scheduled for January. But then there's miscellaneous work like the computer room over here, right over here. The computer room over there needs work, and the 2 art rooms need work as well, but we have to swing. But right now, this purple is to show that they're active today for students.
If I could, let me just talk about the colors and the drawings a little bit, if I could, and then I want Paul Havana to talk about how we're going to make this happen. And, so all of the purple and all of the green on the first and second floor have been turned over to us. All of them have been cleaned by Pat Bradbury and his crews, who have just been phenomenal. I mean, they've worked, I can't tell you how many hours, Saturdays, Sundays, to get these areas ready for the kids to come in. When we were there this morning, Dr. Fieser, Mayor Blake, myself, Matt Woods, Pat Bradbury, walked the school, and teachers were there. Paul can talk about the excitement, and the energy that's taking place, but teachers are setting up their classrooms. They're happy to be there. The IT department was there today, setting up all of the technology that needs to take place. All of the code work, such as fire alarms, all of the wiring and everything is complete. It's been accepted by the fire department, and so we're ready to go. We're excited about bringing all the kids in. As you know, you're taking a tour of the building tomorrow night. For anyone who's interested, that's at 6 o'clock. And then the students and their families have been invited to a sneak peek or an open house on Wednesday night. And these 6th graders, I think, are 5:30 to 7.
5:30 to 6:30.
5:30 to 6:30, and the 7th and 8th graders 7:30 to 6:30 to 7:30. So we're ready to go. I'm gonna, if I can, turn it over to Paul at this point. He's going to talk about why it was important for him. He knows his families, he knows his staff. Why it was important to open all under one roof, and even if it was delayed a few days, that we're ready to go. And
first of all, good evening. We are so excited to welcome our students back on Thursday. It has been a challenging summer, but it has been true teamwork to get the building ready to open. And I had the opportunity, before I start, just to thank Dr. Fieser, Mr. Riccitelli, Mr. Burt, Pat Bradbury, Matt Wood, La Rosa Building Group, and Silver Petroselli. It's been a true team effort. And that includes the members from the police department, the fire department, and the building departments within town to just come together to get this project ready for school to start on Thursday. It is going to be a beautiful facility. But if you live through construction, you live through challenges. When I started our professional learning on Thursday, we had a theme for this year. The theme is, we always say West is best, but together we can accomplish great things. And we started with a quote from General Patton that says, "Pressure makes diamonds." And that's the true essence of this project. There's going to be pressure throughout this whole project. There's going to be pressure of moving classrooms, pressure of dealing with construction, pressure with having to maybe open later. But the final product will be a diamond that's absolutely beautiful. But the key is West Shore needs to stay together. If we are at different locations, and we had to split administration, nursing staff, we had to split teachers between different locations, just wouldn't work. Our community is strong because we're strong together, and that was a priority of mine. West Shore is not just a building, it's not just a facility, it's in the heart and soul of the teachers, parents, and students that make up our school. And my teachers will deliver on Thursday, regardless of the challenges that they will face. They will bring their heart and soul to every class, every classroom and their instruction for their kids. And kids are almost sometimes better than dealing with adults or dealing with adversity. But this is lessons that we have to learn. When you deal with a challenge, you have to come together as a school community. You can't point fingers. You can't run the other way. You have to take what's available, make the best of the situation, and learning will occur, and I guarantee that. The teachers were in the building today. It was great. The PTA, which I want to thank, sponsored a Subway lunch for them. They were happy. They were setting their rooms up. They were excited, and they're just ready to get school underway. We are ready to welcome our kids back to West Shore. So that's just kind of an overview of some of our professional learning and my mindset going into the project. But I'm here to take any questions or concerns you might have.
Paul, talk about the number of classrooms you needed, how you came to that, and what, I mean, we have the number of classrooms that you needed. Just tell us how you're going to do that.
Sure. So Mr. Hayes and myself, we ran different scenarios of scheduling to see, what is the number of classrooms we need to open the building, and it was 25. And 25 is the max number of space being utilized at any given time during the schedule. So with the upstairs of the building, which
it's off the map actually.
But if you see the purple from the green all the way to the purples are downstairs floor, and the upstairs maps it, gives us the 25. The challenge is some of the music classrooms are going to share space within the cafeteria, but with the swing space opening up rather quickly, we're going to be able to move them into a location as soon as possible. And I just have good people that are ready to collaborate, work together, and deal with these challenges. I met with the PE teachers to talk about challenges of not having the gym, and what are you going to do when it rains, and what time alternative assignments can be given when you're in a classroom. How can that connect to the curriculum? I met with the band, chorus, string teachers. What can we do collaboratively in this space while we have to work together? And everyone has been so eager to be selfless and not complain and work together for what's best for the kids. So I'm truly blessed to be the principal of the school with a staff that is going to be able to overcome this and make sure our kids get educated.
Just a couple of things I want to close with, and then we'll open it up to questions. We lived through the East Shore construction. Prior to that, we lived through the construction at Foreign High School, Jonathan Law High School. These having kids in the school while construction is going on is planned for. That's part of the projects, and this project very much parallels East Shore 3 years ago, I can tell you from experience and living through it, this transition into bringing kids back has gone much more smoothly here at West Shore than it did back at East Shore, and East Shore went off without a hitch. The kids adjusted amazingly well. The teachers rose to the occasion, and that project was completed. And now it's a beautiful facility that we have, and that's what we're going to have here at West Shore. And I'll just close with this. I actually talked to 2 teachers this morning, and I talked to one student whose parent is in the school. Parent works here in Parsons, and was here today because he wasn't at school. And the 2 teachers told me they're in classrooms that don't have windows. And they said that they are very excited to be in those classrooms because they're going to have air conditioning. And they've never had air conditioning before, so they're excited about the air conditioning. And the student said the exact same thing. It's so hot in those classrooms in September. We're going to have air conditioning rooms because they know that. So, there's a general acceptance, and Mr. Cavanna has done a tremendous job of communicating with his parents and the West Shore community, which I think is key to getting out pertinent information and keeping parents up to speed, up to date. And you know, and to emphasize to them, it's not optimal conditions, but it's safe, it's clean, and it's educationally conducive to learning. So I'll leave it with that, and we'll answer any questions that you have.
Board members, questions? Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned, Mr. Cabana, you mentioned some plans for how the music teachers are going to work around. They're going to share space in the cafeteria, and the PE teachers are making alternative plans. How do you work around the lack of the media center?
So
Till
what
October.
we've been doing is, and thanks for the support of the district regarding Chromebooks, that we have a lot of Chromebooks offered to our students in our classrooms. And our media specialists and media aid are going to be pushing into the classroom, starting with ELA, and doing different lessons regarding Google Classroom. Our media specialist is trained as a Google Ninja, and having students have access to these, to this type of technology during the lesson. So it's a good opportunity to really to jump into new learning that's technology based, now that we have the resources to support it.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Krasinski?
I'm just curious, the gym itself isn't going to be ready, because this is a change from the last building committee meeting. The gym itself is not going to be ready until January now? Because it was supposed to be ready November, at least the last thing I saw. And just curious as to how gym's going to occur in the winter months if you don't have a gym and you don't have space inside the building.
Yeah, so what will happen is when I have the swing space available, I'll be able to move all of the music out of the cafeteria. So we will run gym, the cafeteria is occupied from 11 to 12:30 every day. So we will run gym in the cafeteria during that time. And then the other times will be more interdisciplinary assignments inside the classroom.
It really only affects one period. Fourth period, all of our specialists are off that period, so it only affects period 5.
Other questions? You have a question, Mr. Jagosinski?
Yeah, I have a hard time really understanding what's going on here, because on one sense, you know, everything's going great. And I have no question that Mr. Cabana and the staff over there is going to do a fantastic job, and, you know, the kids are going to do terrific. But it also appears that we're dealing with a project that's constantly slipping. And is my impression correct that this project is constantly slipping?
If I could answer that first, and then maybe Jim or Bill can chime in. We're behind in where we are at this point, because in any project of this size, there are unforeseen construction conditions that come up. And they did, that put us behind, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on where you are in the phasing. But the overall project is going to be completed in much less time than what we thought it was going to. So to this point, the project is a little bit behind by no fault of anyone. It really isn't. I don't believe that there was any dragging of feet or anything else. There was a tremendous amount of work that needed to get done in a very compact period of time, and any unforeseen conditions which happen on any project can put it behind. And it put it behind slightly, but over the last 4 weeks, they've put a tremendous amount of manpower and resources into catching up.
Do we have a project manager independent of the contractor who's overseeing this project?
Yes, Silver Petroselli is our contract administrator. And I can tell you that Pat Bradbury is on that site every single day. And I don't know if you want to elaborate at all on the schedule.
I can give you the reasons how we ended up where we are. The gym area, for example, we found asbestos in an interior wall. The gym was started in February. That asbestos was not supposed to be there. It halted pretty much the gym production up until 3 weeks ago, until we could get that wall down and get the asbestos out before students got back. Even though we've lost almost 4 months of construction, we're still turning it over less than 30 days from what we were originally going to. So that's one example. In the media center was another issue with asbestos. We were given the media center in March. and we were supposed to turn it over in the end of August. We found asbestos in floor tile, meaning we couldn't start construction in the media center, even though we started demolition. We found it during the demolition until June 19th. And again, that one we lost 2 months, but we're only turning it over a few weeks later. So as Jim said, we put a tremendous amount of work in there. Even though we've lost slippage, it's not as bad as it should be.
One thing that I want to point out, because people may be asking, well, they found asbestos, isn't that dangerous? And there's asbestos in virtually every building. We've remediated the asbestos at most of our buildings. It's any construction that took place, Bill, what was it, prior to 1970?
Yes.
Prior to 1970s or so, had asbestos in it. And now every district in the state has a plan over time to remove all that asbestos. So is it safe? As long as it's encapsulated, as long as it's in floor tiles that are not cracking and chipping, it's safe for the students to be there. But when we remediate it, we have very specific guidelines. It has to be under the direction and under supervision of a licensed environmental engineer. And the state regulates it in the state health department. The health department and DEP, state agencies regulate how you have to do it, and students cannot be present. So any of that work that, any of the asbestos that was found had to be remediated in the summer when the students weren't there. And it was safe as long as, again, as long as it's encapsulated, not disturbed, it's perfectly safe. But when you do construction, you remove it.
I would also
Dr.
remind,
Greg,
oh, excuse me,
sorry.
I was going to remind the board, and I'm not sure if all the board members were in your seats at the time, but when we opened East Shore, the cafeteria was closed. And the cafeteria was closed for 3 solid months. The cafeteria did not open until Thanksgiving. Kids ate lunches in their classrooms. Food service made it work. You didn't have a kitchen. But school went on, and that wasn't planned. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bradbury, we didn't plan that, but there was problems when they, started to gut the kitchen, if I remember correctly, major issues with that. But we made it work. So, it looks like we're sliding, to use your term, but it's, how many of you have been involved in construction in your own homes and you start a project and then there's problems that have to be addressed that you didn't anticipate? And we're dealing with older buildings, which contributes to it as well.
Dr. Gregory?
Can someone speak to the shift in date for the gymnasium from November to January?
Yeah, I think Jim LaRosa just did, but the change in date was, it was originally planned for maybe November, but when asbestos was found in the gym, they had to stop construction on that until the students were out of school. So a number of weeks or months even where no construction could go on until that asbestos was remediated or abated. And so that period of time was lost in the construction of the
So the
gym.
original plan was for it to not be open at the start of school?
Correct.
The window where we have to move kids out and replace the columns and the windows and all that, how long is that going to take per classroom? I think you've got the columns in for the first room, but the windows aren't in yet, and that work
That's
isn't
correct.
done.
So it's about two weeks to take 2 classrooms, stacking classrooms, because the way we have to shore up inside to remove the columns. We have all the steel from when we found the issue to when we got a design. We had to make all the steel. All the steel's on site now, so that's why the first 2 classrooms was our, let's see how we can get in there and do it and still get it open. Well, actually, one's in the admin area too, the second floor, and the first floor of the classroom. We replaced the steel, but there wasn't enough time once the steel got in to do all the masonry, pop the windows in, do all the sheetrocking on the inside. We're going to do that after, and that'll be the first one we do. But once we start, it'll be about 2 weeks per stack of classrooms.
So that's why because I was expecting that those 2 would be done before school started.
Correct. So steel got in last Thursday, was by the time we got the steel in there, got it all adjusted and figured everything out on how to do it. And then we built the wall on Thursday because we knew that Friday just wasn't enough time. Put the window in, do all the sheet rocking, put the ceilings back together, get everything done in time for today.
So that'll start again in October probably?
So when we turn over the 5 classrooms in the media center area, we'll go back to those 2 classrooms. The 101, I know it was room 101, I don't know if they actually function at. Room 101 and 201, there's probably only like 3 days left of work in there to bring it back to use. So it'll be 3 days there, and then what we might do is come in on a weekend and hit it on a weekend, so that way we don't interrupt any of the teachers or any of the classrooms at that time.
Other questions, Mr. Whiskeyman?
In all the time I've served on the board, and almost every project that we've done, we've run into asbestos. And sometimes it was known, and in this case it apparently wasn't known or planned on. You didn't know it was there, or you would have done a different project plan. I just wish to express the hope that we are close to being finished with our abatement issues.
This school is done.
We did
everything we could.
And if I could touch on that, when we presented the capital improvement plan to you, because every year the capital improvement plan includes asbestos abatement as that ongoing plan, the question was asked of, which schools, and we provided the board with every school and the percentage of the school that was complete. And Pat, how many schools are done completely? A good amount of them.
There's a good amount. There's still a few wings. Live Oaks has something to do. Captain has something to do. We just did a little section of there, and the board we've been aggressive with going after wings at a time of floor tile and did some pipe chases. And we've been aggressive going after that. But you're never going to be 100% done with your asbestos removal, because you're going to do a renovation and you may find something in a wall. So that's why the state mandates that we keep an asbestos abatement plan, and it monitors where everything is that's known, that our fuss and oil comes in and just testing regularly and does destructive measures to look for pieces. So we will continue, but we have quite a few that are all floor tile are done.
So,
Mrs. Federico?
oh, I'm sorry, thank you. So just to clarify, the asbestos in the wall is not something that could have been found or taken care of during regular remediation, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we had an issue in the 2 bathrooms where we were demoing the bathrooms on the second, and we opened up a chase and there was pipe insulation there. So it stops. Everything stops. Not only does, but we can't do anything else in that bathroom until the Rosa group gets their abatement contractor in there, sets up containment, so now we lose 5 to 6 days. So now we're also looking at August, that every school district in the country, in the state of Connecticut, is sending all their testing in for approval from the lab. So we're not getting that 48-hour turnaround that we'd like. So we're paying for the expedited turnover, but we don't always get it. And the same thing with the media center. We had PCB remediation, and there were days that we would get to a point where not all the windows would clear. So they have to go back, re-clean, retest, and that's a 4-day test. Jim? I think that was a 4-day test.
It was a 4-day test.
And that lab is backed up. And now that 4-day can turn into a 6-day. And that's how that slips. We're not planning for a 2 or 3 to clean an opening 2 or 3 times, but sometimes it happens. And now we get into removal of brick. And it just keeps going. And we can't do anything else until the opening is clear. So
But there is some asbestos that you won't find until you break down a wall.
there's asbestos we won't find that we don't even know is in there until we open that wall up.
Okay.
When we talk about the planned asbestos abatement that's on the capital improvement plan, that's floor tiles and ceiling tiles.
Floor tiles, everything that's on the capital improvement plan is mostly floor tile abatement, floor tile and glue. And we do get into situations where we get an above ceiling and do a full pipe insulation, and that's what we're going for then.
But otherwise, there could be asbestos in the walls that we would never open up unless we're doing construction. So yes, you're right. it's not, that's the kind of asbestos that you discover when you open up a wall through demolition.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Krasinski?
It's not a question, it's just a comment to the contractors. If you could, now that school is coming back in session, have your workers be very conscious of safety, because I know, I walk by that school all the time, and they leave and gates are left open and windows are left open and doors are left open, and now that kids are going to be back and seeing it and have access to the school. I know during the school day they'll be fine because the staff is there, but in the evenings when your workers leave and everybody's gone, just have somebody police the site and make sure everything's locked up, so we don't run the risk of somebody getting in with gates open. I know we can't do anything about somebody jumping a fence, and hopefully they don't, but I think safety has to be number one with the kids. So thank you.
Yeah, and as long as Mrs. Krasinski touched on that, security, obviously security and safety is our number one priority all the time. The Milford Police Department has worked with us as they always do. They're tremendous, and they've gone through the school to make sure that first of all, the traffic patterns and things are safe for kids to get in and out of the school. And also they've looked at the areas of construction, how they're shut off, and how those would be isolated from the school, which is in basic lockdown from the rest of the school. We've also been we're working out the details. As you know, the SRO at West Shore, at all three of the middle schools, shares their time with other middle schools or the academy. We're working on a plan where the SRO will be able to spend the entire day at West Shore, and then the police department will backfill for an SRO to be, the other period of time at the academy. So it's just that added level of protection. But the greeter will be at the front door. The front door buzzers will be in operation. Again, these are all the things that we take into consideration when we're planning for a project that's going to have construction on the site.
Mr. Jagosinski?
Yeah, and my main concern is not whether or not the project is slipping. My main concern is the impact that it has on teaching and academics at the school. And when Mr. Cabana and the staff have to worry about overcoming obstacles created by the building project, that's time taken away from them focusing on, improving academics. So that's my real concern here. And I hope we're making every effort to make it as easy as possible for these people and, reducing the challenges.
And I assure you that we are. And we can speak from experience. I toyed with the idea of asking Kathy Williams from East Shore to come. She's retired though, so we left her alone. But she would attest to the fact that school went on, and when we say challenges, a lot of those challenges are maybe inconvenience, if that's the right word for it. But the learning in the classroom goes on, and the learning takes place. And with the added technology of a Chromebook in virtually every student's hands, we think it's a great opportunity, and the kids rise to the occasion, and so do the teachers. But your point is very well taken. We want to get this done as quick as we possibly can. It's always discussed at the building committee level, and Matt will attest to it. Bill will attest to it that we always talk about it would be great if we'd be able to move all the kids out, but we can't, and so we do the best that we can. And this is not uncommon. This is most school projects don't have the luxury of moving their students out.
My comment is not to get it done as quickly as possible, but to get it done with the least impact on the students and on the staff.
And that's a good point. Just to make it, we had true professional learning on Thursday and Friday. Improving our student achievement is something that we take very seriously, and something that we are working very hard to continue to do. We showed some gains, and we'll talk about that in a different meeting in some specific area. But we have a lot of work to do. So our focus is increasing student achievement and having our kids learn no matter what the outcome is. So I do appreciate your comments, and I just want the board to know that's still center in our mind moving forward.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Questions?
construction is not an exact science, and issues arise, obviously, but it's very clear that everybody working on this project that has had their hand in it has done a tremendous job. So thank you to all of you and to Mr. Hoopan. I know that it's going to be a great school year for you, and you know, the big picture is that those kids are going to have a wonderful place where learning will occur every day. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for the update. Much appreciated.
The next item on the agenda is an amendment to the capital improvement plan regarding the Foreign High School Planetarium. And Mr. Riccitelli and Mrs. Lasala is here. Justine Lasala, who is the Supervisor of Science and Career and Technical Education.
Thank you again, Dr. Fieser. In your package, you have all the information regarding what we're talking about here tonight. Very quickly, because I know you have a long agenda, and you've been provided with most of the information that you need. But the capital improvement plan you approved in May, it's a basic snapshot of what's needed as far as capital improvements in the school system over a 5-year period. After we presented the plan to you, it came to our attention that the planetarium was going to need repairs, if not total replacement, sooner rather than later. So this is the first time you're seeing it, but we're asking you to place it on the amend your capital improvement plan, which then will be sent to the mayor for his inclusion. He sends the citywide capital improvement plan to the Planning and Zoning Board in November and to the Board of Aldermen in December. So if you make this revision tonight, that will we will put this, we'll request that the mayor put it on the citywide plan in hopes of having funding sooner rather than later to get the planetarium to where it should be. You have a detailed information and background sheet that was provided by Ms. Lasala, and that talks about the potential costs of the project. It talks about the reasons why the planetarium at this point needs to be replaced, and basically it's the planetarium, the physical plant, and the console, the guts of it, are the original from 1973 when the building opened up. 1970, I was doing the math today, and I think it's 44 years, maybe? So we've probably gotten our money's worth out of that planetarium console and the whole thing. And just one thing that, that I would say, and Mrs. Solomon will follow up on it, the fact that we have a high school that has a planetarium really distinguishes us among the state, because there's not a lot of schools that do. And it's something that distinguishes Milford Public Schools because all of our schools use it. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Justine, and we can answer any questions that you have. But basically, we're asking you to amend the capital improvement plan to include this item at an estimated cost of $480,000 and be sent to the mayor.
So yeah, just the current state of our planetarium, it's still functioning, but it's at the point where it may soon stop functioning and we wouldn't be able to fix it. So when we're thinking about, do we want to invest as a community in keeping the planetarium running and up and going, we would really need to make the upgrades to make it into a modern system. We got some estimates for different options, so no option has been decided about, our current projector is an optical projector. Do we want to go digital? Do we want a hybrid? There's a lot of other decisions to be made, but it's just a fact of investing in our planetarium, investing in our community. It's a great resource. It's a scarce resource these days, but I'm here for any questions if you have any questions for me.
Mrs. Krasinski?
I think maybe you just answered it, because I was looking at the three options and thinking a like-new system, which I would assume, or I shouldn't assume anything, but I'm guessing is like a refurbished system.
No, a like-new system would be a brand-new optical projector, like we have. But now, modern planetarium systems are incorporating a digital component, which just makes them more dynamic. They allow visualizations that an optical projector doesn't.
So a like-new optical is more money than a brand-new top-of-the-line digital system. Okay.
Yes. The
And a
technologies-
digital system is better nowadays than an optical
The
system?
visual quality is not the same, but they offer a different option where you can show, the optical projector is where you see the actual stars and the visual acuity of the stars when you're under the dome, and it makes it look like real stars. When you add a digital component, now you could zoom into a planet, let's say, and now see actual digital images of that planet as well. So it's more interactive. Does that make
And
sense?
it's less expensive.
A just digital system is actually cheaper because the optical quality isn't as good.
Okay. And so is the third system both?
Yeah, a hybrid system is.
Which is
a lot
just as expensive as just the optical? Okay.
Yeah, you would have, probably have a lower quality optical projector than you would an optical only projector. I'm not an expert on this at all.
It just seemed to be funny that it was the like-new system was more expensive than the
Yes.
top-of-the-line digital, at least it was the way it was described, so I was just curious about that.
Yes, so, we work with a company in Virginia that does our annual projector maintenance every year. So I reach out to them and I talk to them, they're the absolute experts on it, and got, initial discussions and initial round figures, right, thinking of. But, whatever we do moving forward, we speak to them and maybe speak to some other companies that do this as well and find out what the best option is and what we want to do. But I just wanted to give you some rough estimates.
The other thing that's striking is the $400 per seat to replace the chairs.
Well, that's an estimate. Again, when I send you the capital improvement plan, I say that these are only estimates. They're rough estimates. We haven't gone out to bid, and obviously we would go out to bid at the time, and I'm sure that we're going to get them for much cheaper than that. But I'd hate to say to you that we can get a seat in the auditorium for $200 and then the bids come back at $350. So this is another project that would, if it got on the capital improvement plan and if it was chosen for funding, it would be turned over to the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee. They would, they would do all the bidding and things like that to try and ensure the best pricing on it. The best, what we need, but also the best pricing.
Would there be asbestos removal required?
I put that in there. Yeah.
Okay. So is that considered in this 400?
It is, yes. What I put,
Because I'm thinking you got to remove those seats, you're going to be touching asbestos tile on the floor probably.
yes, what in the paragraph second from the bottom, I told you what I included in there was the estimate of $400,000 plus $400 per seat, and then a contingency, and also the possibility of that there may be asbestos under the carpet in the glue, things like that. So, yes, I've tried to. And again, $480,000 may not be the final number, but this would just get it on the capital improvement plan. Until it gets on the plan, we have nothing.
I've always felt that the planetarium was kind of a hidden gem here in Milford, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people don't even know we have one. So I would, fully support seeing it brought up to speed and upgraded so that we could use it as a community resource and maybe even make some money off of it. I also know that the Milford Education Foundation has in the past talked about things that they would love to do to support the planetarium. So if this does move forward, I would hope that you would engage them to see what kinds of things they've been thinking about. And I know that they use the planetarium for their fundraiser. I think every other year they do. So, Mr. Hagedorn?
Thank you. Do other schools use this planetarium now?
Not currently.
Okay.
But again, going back to talking about the digital option or an optical digital hybrid, the digital planetarium offers the opportunity for not even just star shows, but other types of immersive shows, almost kind of like an IMAX-y type thing, but you could do, it doesn't even just have to be astronomy now. It could be, there's, immersive videos about going inside the human body, let's say, or something.
Like Ms. Glennon, I'm pleased to see that there's plans to use the planetarium a bit more. I think that's very exciting, and I think you can't do that unless you have an up-to-date system and up-to-date equipment. I'm just curious about a couple of things. One is, how much does it cost to build a planetarium? Like if we had to start from scratch?
Yeah, if you're gonna start with a whole, that's millions.
Millions, okay.
I don't know.
So we're paying $500,000 potentially $480 to get use of something that is, worth or could cost millions. Okay.
According to Mr. Riccitelli, in 2057, they're going to come back again.
Well, that makes sense. Okay. My second question is, and I'm just curious, so normally we plan the capital improvement plan out for like 5 years. Just curious, how come this was never on before? Just slipped under the radar, or?
I think it was under the radar. I think that it was continued to be Band-Aid, but I think it was, it finally got to the point where we said we just can't Band-Aid it anymore, and it rose to the level of the capital improvement plan.
Okay.
I would add to just probably about a year and a half ago, the company that does the regular maintenance, they said, you really need to start thinking about what you're going to do, because the actual optical projector is still functioning great. It's the console, it's the electronics that runs the system, and the company that originally manufactured that system doesn't exist anymore. So any fixes that they've had to do, they basically try to find old parts from old consoles, but they're really, it was getting the feeling that there could be something that's gonna happen that we're not gonna be able to find the parts for. So that was probably about a year and a half ago, and then trying to figure out what we're gonna do and how we're gonna approach it.
Okay, sure, thank you. And just one last question, the $400 a seat, is that just materials, or does that include
Well, they're theater seats.
installation, removal?
Yeah, it would be installation. It would be removal and installation.
Right.
Yeah, but they're theater seats. They're more than a seat that we're sitting on. But yeah, that's the initial cost that we got, and we'll do much more research and eventually go out to bid.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Gregory.
So my perspective is having taught in that room as a first-year teacher, which is challenging. My suggestion is that when this is conceived, include some sort of monitoring. So as you're bringing in different classes and different teachers who may not be used to teaching in the round, there's extra support for them for management.
Are you suggesting something about our students?
No, I'm suggesting something about new teachers.
Yeah, so the current seats, they're permanently reclined almost, whereas you'd want to have seats that can recline and come up so that you can actually face forward and face your teacher during intern.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, I think we have a motion to amend our capital improvement.
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education approves the revised 2017 through 2022 capital improvement plan by adding the Joseph A. Foreign High School Planetarium upgrade project to the plan and forwarding the plan to the mayor for consideration and funding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Federico has seconded. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the post-graduation plans for the class of 2017. This is an annual report, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burt.
All right, thank you very much. I believe we have copies that are coming around. All right, while we're waiting for the copies to come around, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Kathy Benetti, who put this whole thing together, has been spending weeks on this, working tremendously with the staff from from all three of our high schools to try to get an accurate, as best as possible, accurate count for this report. And a couple of things to note. One of the things that we have to point out is that we're using a graduation, the number of graduates is really based on the number of students that got diplomas, which is not going to be the same as the Connecticut State Department of Education's graduation rate. They have a very specific formula that deals with a very specific group of students. They exclude certain students, and they typically give us a 4-year rate, a 5-year rate, and a 6-year rate. This is based on the number of students this past spring that got a diploma. So what are those students doing once they leave us in June? So that's some of the qualifiers on that. I also have Mr. Thompson, Mr. Berkowitz here if you have any specific questions. Unfortunately, Mrs. Cianti couldn't join us tonight. She had a conflict. So the first table, this is specifically on our student acceptance rates to 2- and 4-year colleges. You can see we have a 5-year look back here. And just to walk you through, if you go to the bottom of the table, that's this previous school year, 2016-17. And again, the number of graduates there. And then the next column over, there's the number of students accepted for a 4-year or 2-year college. And then that translates into those percentages, and then an overall percentage in the last column. So I'll give you a few seconds to take a look at this table. I know you just received this.
Mr. Wiskeyman?
In your look back to 2012-13, are these numbers the number of students who were accepted to college in the immediate summer, fall following graduation, or would that include students who might have taken a year or two off and subsequently went to college? Say they went into the military first and then went to college or something else like that, as opposed to those who immediately went to college.
This is predominantly based on information given to us by the schools, as well as given to by students. They log into a system that we have access to that helps track their college applications. So that would be up through today, essentially. We would not then look forward into, if we had a student take a year off or a PG year or something like that, did they then get accepted into college? That would be a great statistic to have. I'd love to have that, but it's difficult to track down folks after they leave high school.
I hear you, but the presumption then is, at least to some degree, some students not currently listed on here may have subsequently gone on to additional educations, and like some of us may have taken 10 years to get to their to their college.
The state has actually begun to track that, but it's slow progress because they're looking at not only students who go back to college, they're looking at how many students remain in college and actually graduate 6 years later, I believe it is. So that's a long span to track kids, and then they'll look at, okay, how many students graduated in 6 years, how many kids stayed a year, how many kids stayed 2 years, how many kids stayed 3 years, how many kids left college, then returned to college, and they're using all the state university data to produce that report. And so we get that.
I just think it's interesting because some of us, like myself, had experiences of long absences after high school, military service, and then finally waking up one day and saying, hey, you know what, I really ought to go to college. And, so it happens, and perhaps you can look back and say, that preparation in high school wasn't all that bad.
That would be great information to have. I agree.
Okay.
Mrs. Krasinski?
So do you have a figure for how many of that 13.2% that's left that wasn't accepted that didn't apply at all? Like, did 100% of the kids that applied to colleges got in and a certain percentage didn't apply at all? Or, was it 90% or?
I can tell you about Jonathan Long, 88% of our seniors applied to a 2 or 4 year college. Of those 88%, 100% of them were accepted somewhere. So for my numbers, there's a 3 or 4% gap that either chose military, technical school, or to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on this top table?
Okay, so then the next table will get into more specific. This is something that's been reported for a number of years. This is the top tier selection from colleges, and the definition of that, as you can see in the third sentence there, is top tier colleges are defined as most difficult or very difficult entrance criteria according to the Peterson's College Guide. And as you can see down at the bottom there in 2017, there's been a jump in both the number of students applying and the number of students accepted and enrolling. We would be very interested in watching this over the next few years to see if this was an anomaly or if we continue down this trend. Anyone has any questions on that table?
So have you been able to attribute that jump to anything?
Personally, no, but I do have our two principals here. I'm sorry?
What was the question?
Did you notice anything over the course of the past few years with this particular graduating class that might contribute to this jump in the number?
I think every year we work very hard, especially our guidance department, our college and career aid, obviously teachers, administrators, to try to push students to challenge themselves to apply to more of these types of schools and top tier schools. Sometimes they're accepted in the top tier schools, but they don't go for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's financial, and sometimes something else is going on where they just decide to go to another school. So and some classes are a little bit more. They achieve at a higher level academically, and sometimes you'll see that in the acceptance rates. But I think we've done, collectively, when I say we, Jonathan Law and Forum, I think we've done a good job trying to encourage students to explore all possible options. And don't limit yourself. And if it's a financial issue, we can help you see if you can get financial aid or grants of some sort. So I think that's something that we've really been focused on since I've been in Milford the last 4 years.
Mr. Jakuzinski?
Because of the small number of students involved, we're talking about 39 students who enrolled in top-tier colleges, it might be interesting to follow up after a year and find out how many of those students are still going to that school in the sophomore year, because most of the dropout tends to be in the freshman year. The one thing that we want to avoid is getting kids in top-tier schools and then finding out that they can't, make it in that school. So I understand the difficulty of figuring out if they graduate. That's virtually impossible, but it's a relatively small number, and it would be interesting to know how that's turning out.
It's a great idea.
Any other questions?
Okay, the next page. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Just if I may.
Yes, Mr. Wiskiman.
Has the identification of what you classify as top-tier colleges changed over time? Some adding, some dropping in terms of what you would classify as, quote, top tier?
Luckily, I don't have to identify them. We have these books that you can get that identify the top tier. So it's very difficult, most difficult, and typically that changes over time. You're a Harvard or Yale, unlikely they drop down, but some of those do vary between the two tiers, and you might drop down. Mostly depending upon factors as acceptance rate is the main one, correct? So the
We've only
percentage.
changed the monitoring guide once in the last probably 7 years. We used to use one from 2012, and we just switched to 2016 last year.
Yeah, it was just, I would have expected not to have much change, but you.
Not too much.
But there is some.
Yeah.
So on the next page, a little bit more of a breakdown here by the three high schools. You can see in the asterisk there, the top row, This is where we put in the actual percentage rate. We anticipate that coming out shortly. As you may recall, I believe is in one of the board updates, we had an excellent increase in our graduation rates. Was that in the spring? Yeah, and there was really, which is a concerted effort from all three schools in making sure that our students are progressing on time, progressing through credits on time, that freshman to sophomore transition year, and then really getting our students graduated within that 4 years. So that's been a tremendous effort from all of our high schools, so congratulations to them. And again, breaking it down, you can see, for those of you who are asking what happens to some of our other students, again, 4-year, 2-year, technical or career school, military work, or undecided and unknown. One other little side note there, if you look at the academy, the last sentence down at the bottom, this includes our grade 12 students, quote unquote, who attended the academy, the 5th-year vocational experience program, and plus the post-graduation transition academy program, all which are housed at the academy. So any questions on this particular table? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the enrollment report. Or, I'm sorry, it's the advanced placement performance report. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry about that, Brian. And Brian Scott is going to be presenting this report.
Hello. So it was just about a year ago at this very meeting that I met all of you for the first time, so nice to see you again. I'm going to take you through the AP summary report. This is the district-wide report for how our students performed on AP exams and in AP courses. Just a little bit of background information before I get started with our actual numbers. AP stands, of course, for Advanced Placement. This is a program that is conducted by the College Board. Courses that are designated as AP courses by the Milford Public Schools have to submit an overview of the course, a course syllabus, and recommended resources to the College Board to be approved. After they are approved, the College Board will issue a number to the school, which allows the school to place the AP designation onto the student's transcript. The expectation of these courses is that the rigor or challenge of the course would be equivalent to that of a college-level course. And just a side note that here in Milford, of course, the Board of Education made the decision to share the cost of AP exams with families who have students in the AP courses, and that is, while not unique, a somewhat unusual platform, which I think has greatly helped some of the results that you're going to see as we go through this information. The AP exams are administered globally in 2 weeks in May. Kind of a miraculous piece of logistics. Just real quickly, the number this year globally was over 2,750,000 exams, all administered on the same days by College Board. In Connecticut alone, there were over 35,000 exams administered over that week. And here in Milford, we administered exams in over 20 courses, so quite a few courses here in Milford. AP exams are scored by the College Board. The College Board invites teachers from all around the nation to come and serve as scorers. They receive training when they first arrive in a designated AP exam, and then they receive some updates depending on if the course has been or the exam has been revised, and then they serve as scorers for the exam itself. Just a side note that we have had teachers from both Jonathan Law and from Foreign High School who have served as AP scorers, which is, as a former AP teacher myself, is a miraculous opportunity for professional development and insight into what it really takes to pass those exams. One of those teachers is actually with us tonight. Austin Caesar is back there. He's one of our AP teachers from over at Foreign High School. But we also had AP scorers from Jonathan Law High School as well. The exams are scored on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest score, 1 being the lowest score. And College Board sets the pass rate at a score of 3 or above, which we'll touch on a little bit later because that is a point of interest. So the first bit I thought we would take a look at is the number of students who are taking AP courses. And this is something that we in Milford Public Schools are doing really well at. In 2017, over 700 Milford students had the opportunity to take an AP exam. But a note, as we take a look, you can see this number definitely did plateau a bit this year. We only went from 700 to 701, whereas in previous years we had pretty large gains. It does raise a question, which we'll get to at the end, about whether or not we've kind of reached the maximum number of students who might be willing or excited about taking these types of exams. But starting with 2011, 2012, you can see that the number of students who have had this opportunity in their high school experience has really grown tremendously. If we look at 2012, only 300 students had the opportunity to take an AP exam, and as I just mentioned a moment ago, now we have over 700 students who haven't had the opportunity to take an exam. Of course, students are not limited to taking just one exam. Many students take multiple exams in a year and over their course of their academic career with us. So this is our next area, which is the number of exams that were taken. This is another area in which we saw continued growth from 2011. You take a look at your chart, the blue line indicates the number of students who, the number of exams that were taken by Milford students. The red line represents the number of students that took exams. So this year, over 1,246 exams were taken by Milford students, which is really a miraculous accomplishment by our high schools. Scores obviously matter a great deal when we talk about the AP exams, as I mentioned a few moments ago. The College Board sets the pass rate at a 3. We did have a slight drop in the number of exams that did receive a passing score this year. We went from 742 exams having received a 3 or higher to 731. But I do think of particular note that as we look at this chart and we look at these scores, I think it's a particularly important item to bring up, that over the course of this miraculous increase in the number of students that are taking exams and the number of exams that are being taken by students, the pass rate for Milford Public Schools has barely dropped. We went from 63% to 61% of students passing AP exams over the period of this chart, which is really quite impressive. You would anticipate when you see that many more students getting those types of opportunities that you would see some kind of a drop. And of course, students differ from year to year. There's no surefire way to ensure that a certain number of students are going to pass exams. So even though we do see a slight drop here this year, this is something we will monitor, but it's not something that we find particularly alarming. As you can see, the results are still significantly higher than 2015 and 2014. Now, as I mentioned, a score of 3 or higher is considered a passing score by the College Board, but this is something that we're taking a little bit of a closer look at. I contacted all of the universities in our state university system, and with the exception of 2 courses, the state university system do not accept 3s for credit anymore. It will only accept a score of 4 or higher for credit. The 2 exceptions are one of the calculus exams and then one of the physics exams. Those are the only 2 exams they will give a 3, and those are both scheduled to go out as well and be replaced by a 4 or higher. So really, even though College Board says a 3 or higher is passing, it is important to note that a 4 or higher is what colleges are looking for in terms of granting credit. Now, granting credit is not the only purpose for which a student would take an AP course, and that's something that we'll revisit as we talk a little bit more about this. This was an area where we did see a significant drop this year. As you can see, the number of exams that scored at a 4 or higher went from 385 to 351. It's still significantly higher than we saw in 2015 and 2016, but this is probably the area that was of greatest concern to us as we took a look at this year's results. We don't yet have the results aggregated by College Board for the nation. They have released them by each one of the exam titles, but that does not give us a clear picture of how many students, because as I mentioned a few minutes ago, millions of students take these exams, so to try to aggregate it gets a little bit complicated, and we still are technically in the portion of time the College Board designates for petitions. Students are allowed to petition against their score if they feel that their exam score was inaccurate. Once we do have those numbers, we will go back and take another look at this because, as I said, this is something we're going to make sure we monitor closely. On the other end of the spectrum, of course, is a score of 1. A score of a 1 would clearly indicate that the student was not thoroughly prepared on the date of the exam, which would be very concerning to us. And this was another bit of actually pretty good news, because even though we saw a significant increase over those past few years of the number of students who are, or number of exams that are taken, only 179 exams this year came back with a score of 1, which is a pretty miraculous feat for all of those exams. One of the other things that I know we've talked about, or you guys have talked about in your past, are the AP Scholars, which is something that Milford has done miraculously well at. I contacted Ralph. He was unable to put me in contact with the person who gave him the list last year of what other schools have had for AP Scholars, but hopefully we can track that down. But here are our results, and again, really miraculous. I mean, we can see that yet again this year, the number of AP Scholars that Milford Public Schools produced went up, and went up pretty substantially as we take a look at that chart. AP Scholars are, of course, broken down into different categories, and you can see that list in your handout. We have AP Scholars with honor, AP Scholars with distinction, and then National AP Scholars. Each one becoming a more difficult level for a student to achieve. And as you can see, we increased in almost every one of those subsections this year, which is, again, very impressive. The only area we did not improve in, we stayed the same in, which are National AP Scholars, in which we had 4 this year.
Explain the colors.
Sure. The orange color represents the National AP Scholars, which is at the very top, and we have 4. The green color represents AP Scholars with distinction. We had 52 this year compared to 35 for last year. The yellow represents AP Scholars with honor. We had 36 this year compared to 33 last year. And then the blue section represents AP Scholars. We had 102 AP Scholars this year compared to 82 AP Scholars last year. Oh, there we go. Okay. This next one is really the one that, as a member of the Milford Board of Education family, that I was most proud of when I saw this. And this is our EER score, which is a little complicated, but essentially what the EER score breaks down to, it is the percentage of graduating seniors who passed at least one AP exam during their high school career. And as you can see, we have had a steady increase in this percentage over the past 3 years. And really since the time we began to make this movement to open up the opportunity to take AP courses to more students, we've seen miraculous growth in this. We are now at 48.9% of graduating seniors having received at least 1 3 on an AP exam, which is really quite impressive. So there are some things that as we took a look at the AP scores and as I reviewed all the data with Mr. Burke, Dr. Fieser, and Mr. Berkowitz and Mr. Thompson, we went over all of this, and as we broke it down, there were some things that stood out to us as concerns. There were some things that stood out to us that we need to monitor, and then it also raised some questions for us. One of the items that did come up as an area that we will need to monitor closely is the correlation between AP scores and the grades that students are receiving in classes. There are some areas in which this seems to be a little bit of a problem, so we will continue to monitor that a little bit more closely. Another area we will focus on is the trend lines for EER and also the trend lines for students who receive a 4 or higher on those scores. We want to ensure that that EER line does continue to trend up, while at the same time making sure that we don't see a continued trend in the downward shift of the number of students who are receiving 4s. We do have, of course, some questions that come out of this data. Looking at those early charts, you can see one of those questions is clearly whether or not we have plateaued in terms of the number of students who will take AP courses. Another question that came from this review of this data is whether or not we've reached our goal of access to students. So in other words, have we really reached the goal where all students who wish to take an AP course have the opportunity to do so? Another question that came up is how can we support students in achieving that 4+, while at the same time make sure we're not limiting opportunities for other students to gain access to AP courses. And then lastly, taking a look at how do we support teachers as we move forward with offering that vast array of AP courses.
Mr. Jagosinski?
Any sense for how many students in a typical AP class actually take the test?
Almost all.
Almost all.
Yep. Where we do provide the funding and it is considered a requirement for the course, there are always, of course, those exceptions in which a student maybe doesn't show up on the exam day or becomes ill and cannot take the exam, but the vast majority of our students do take the exams.
Do we have any way to tell how we're doing compared to similar school districts in the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, we've started to go through that information, and of course, as I said, AP releases that information very slowly. Last year, when I first came to the district, that was one of the things we took a close look at, and we looked at both high schools independently to see how they compared to other high schools across the state. We will do the same thing once statewide those scores are released. As I said, it gets very tricky because the hard part being, for example, at Jonathan Law, we have a very large number of students to take AP Psychology, not as many students to take AP US History, so it gets hard to aggregate those numbers together. But once we have the opportunity to do that, that's something that we take a close look at every year.
Mrs. Krasinski?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you said the cost is shared for the AP exam. What is the cost for the AP exam and how is that?
I believe it's about $95, and we put this in my report last year. I believe the students pay the first $20 and we pick up the rest, and also it's dependent on a sliding scale, depending upon need of the student.
And is that, do parents know about that well in advance before their children sign up for classes?
Correct. That's the reason we can require students to take the exam. If we didn't pay for the exam, it wouldn't be fair for us to require them to take it. Some students, in some cases, are taking 5 exams, which would create a problem. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
No, you're exactly right. Some are taking 5, some are taking 4. I mean, it really is a great opportunity, and it does cost a lot of money, so it's good the district picks up that tab for the students who are remaining.
And I believe there's a cap after 3 exams, but don't quote me on that right now.
A cap after 3 exams?
And then we pick up the full.
Oh, okay. Right. I thought it was the other way. I was just wondering. And my second question is, and you touched on it a little bit, but so on the AP exam, passing score is a 3. How does that correlate to a grade in the grade book for?
Right, so there is not, and we would not expect there to be a direct ratio because, it is a one-day test that a student shows up for, and you can never predict what's going to happen. A student gets a flat tire on the way to the exam, and all of a sudden, the world comes to an end. However, we would expect to see a greater correlation between, say, students who received A's and B's in the courses corresponding more directly with students who receive 4s and 5s on the test. So that's one of those things that we're going to start monitoring.
Is the test even, is the test that you take for your AP exam even a grade?
No.
In the grade book?
No,
okay.
we don't receive.
That's basically, that's a better way of putting it.
We don't receive the grades from the College Board until July.
Okay. All right.
So we would have no way of putting those into the students.
Okay.
So just to piggyback off of that, your first point was looking at the correlation between AP scores and class grades. So can you speak, can you speak to that a little bit? I think that's what is that the question you were asking about?
I sort of had that question, but I also was wondering if a kid takes an AP exam, I haven't had children.
So is there,
taking
what is
those
the
yet,
sense? What is, what is it that stood out to you?
There are some courses that we took a look at in which the breakdown in terms of the students receiving 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s was greatly skewed from what those students received as overall class grades in those courses. In other words, a lot of students receiving A's and B's in the course, and yet very few students receiving passing grades on the AP
Okay.
exam.
Mr. Whiskeyman?
Considering our, at least for the moment, longer-term trend of reducing or reduction in student enrollment, how do you foresee this impacting the AP class enrollments? Because obviously, there's going to be some downward pressure simply because there are fewer students entering into the high school, at least has for the last few years, and I think the projections are this is likely to continue for the next few years anyway, based upon the number of students we have in our middle schools coming up.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the contributing factors to where we start to see that plateau around 700. Just not every student is interested in taking an AP course. Additionally, right now, the way we have it structured, freshmen don't take AP courses, so obviously they're not going to be impacting that number. But yeah, that's a very large contributing factor to how many students are taking AP exams and the number of AP exams that we're having students take is the fact that we have fewer students.
I would add, if I may, so we're mindful of the fact that the enrollment is declining, and we're wondering, are we going to be able to offer simultaneously 20 advanced placement courses in both schools? Will there be sufficient enrollment? So, we're looking, sort of down the road saying kind of like what-if scenarios, and so we anticipate there may be some courses that would be offered every other year instead of every single year. We're even looking at, is there a possibility, and I mean, again, this is not for next year, but we're looking at, is there a possibility somewhere down the road where we could actually, offer a course and transport kids from one building to the other to take the class together to enable a full class, so that it could be offered, for example, every year as opposed to having to offer it every other year kind of thing. So we know we have to address those. We also know if we were to do something like that, and I've talked with both principals about that, we have to look at the schedule, because if you're going to talk about, kids, and the other possibility.
We also have online possibilities in some cases where you might alternate the teacher and keep the students in the same place, but they alternately have an online learning experience, on every other week or something like that. I don't know.
Right, there's
lots
that,
of things.
and we also this year, and we now have 1 or 2 teachers who are going back and forth between the schools teaching AP. So what we know that that we have to start wrestling. I mean, we are already looking at it, but we need to look at it, in more detail, because it's going to hit us sooner than later, and we don't want to see kids get hurt in the process.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you.
I have two questions, and one piggybacks off of that. So in the past, I know we have tried doing distance learning where, the teacher's in one building and some of the students might be in the other building, and it really hasn't worked out. There's been a lot of challenges, and, has technology advanced to the degree that we could be looking at that again, or is it really more an issue of having the teacher in front of the kids has the most impact?
We've really started to increase the amount of professional development that we've dedicated with teachers to being able to use that type of technology that makes distance learning or blended learning more successful, but we're still really in the very early stages of that. There's a lot that can be done through apps and through platforms in which a teacher can create video lessons that a student can access at any time. We're really just starting to take a look at those and really starting to get teachers comfortable with those. The other part of that would then be to get students comfortable with that, because it is a very different learning experience. I don't know how how many people have taken a distance learning or an online learning course, but it takes an incredible amount of self-discipline on behalf of the learner
Right.
to really make sure that you're doing the work and staying focused during those video lessons. But we are taking a look, especially looking at it in more of the flipped classroom or blended learning setting.
So the other thing I wanted to ask, several years ago, the board had a presentation by a group of students on the AP program, and I still remember this one student who was not a student who would typically take an AP class, but he decided he wanted to try it, and he admitted that he didn't do very well on the test, but he felt that what he gained from the course itself and how it, preparing him for college was worth his while to take the course. So, it's often said that just taking one AP course will prepare you. You'll be better prepared for success in college. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of reports have come out from the National Association of College and Career Counselors, which have cited that taking highly rigorous courses such as the AP courses, also IB courses, ECE courses, do prepare students to be successful when they get into that most challenging year, which is their freshman year, which someone just mentioned a moment ago. And I think, if we take a look at the district summary report from the state, our college persistence rate, the percentage of students that return for their sophomore year, is actually quite high. And that's available through the State Department of Education. And I think that's definitely a contributing factor, is the opportunity that we give students to take those really challenging courses while they're with us, which prepares them better for when they get out to college.
Thank you. Mrs. Krasinski?
I think I recall seeing that sometime during the summer, each high school, or maybe it's just the district, does some kind of AP preparedness course?
Yeah.
Yep.
Boot camp, all right. Do you track to see how well those students who take the class, because I'm guessing it's not required. I'm guessing it's voluntary, or parents force their children to go. In the
Probably more the latter.
Yeah. But do you track to see how well they do on the AP
No,
tests?
we have not. That's certainly something we can do. When I received the report from College Board, it does list every student's score on every single exam they took, which means that the report is quite hefty. But we certainly could go through it and identify those students and see if that's helped them be successful. The other thing that we did take a look at were the students who were taking a second AP exam. So in other words, they had taken an AP course in, say, their junior year and then returned to take a different AP course in their senior year. That rate or pass rate was significantly higher. So students who have had exposure to a really rigorous course really tend to be successful later on in rigorous courses.
Dr. Gregory?
I'm curious, some of your questions for the future about the level of interest and the students' perceived level of access. Are you planning to ask the students?
Yes, absolutely. Informally, of course, they give us feedback on that by which courses they register for and which courses they don't register for. But we are looking, you may recall, we took a look at some surveys, student surveys last year. This year we will do the same, and before we ever made any decision regarding changing what AP courses we're offering, that is definitely something we would take into consideration.
Other questions? Mr. Wiskiman?
I'd like to just take this opportunity to, in the process of, we opened a discussion about the possibility of online or blended learning. There are a number of students who are not in our school system, but who could benefit by some engagement with our school system. For example, just personal experience, I've got a couple of grandkids in Florida who are homeschooled, but every Friday they actually attend a regular school for the day, go to regular classrooms, socialization with other students going to the school, take some specific course or courses that are embedded within their learning. And I think students who might be in those kinds of circumstances might be open to some of our educational opportunities here and could re-engage them with our excellent school systems here and be a persuader to bring some students into the system who might otherwise completely be outside of the system. So I just lay that out as a possibility, because here's a case where some students gain the opportunity to be involved with professional educators, even if not 100% of the time, who may do blended learning, who may be taught at home, whose parental instructions may vary quite a bit. Some may be excellent, some may be not so excellent. But, you know, there's, and also the thing I think that many of these students miss the most is the socialization aspect of face-to-face learning experiences with groups of like students, and that, you know, there's something, especially since our enrollment is, you know, take the opportunity of maybe picking up a few more students, even if in kind of a one-off or one day a week, or some particular aspects that might be of some value. It might be worth exploring the possibility of offering such opportunities to the community, which otherwise we might not engage with. So I'm just kind of, I don't know if there's much of an audience out there for that, but there might be a few.
Yeah. Right now, I know that students who take AP courses do register through something called AP Student, and they do quite frequently visit other AP teachers' websites to, let's say, borrow things to help them prepare. And I know Mr. Caesar's experienced that as well. But certainly we could start looking beyond that, because that's obviously sort of a captive audience of AP students at other schools. But we could certainly look at making some of our resources.
It might not just be AP, but it might be other opportunities as well, because if we begin to face the challenge of having enough students to run a course, even having 2 or 3 or 5 additional students could make the difference for a year or two in some specific situations.
So I hear what you're saying. I think there's another whole factor that people may not be aware of, and that is Florida's view of homeschooling is very, very different than Connecticut's. So in Florida, there is a relationship between public education and homeschooling, in which many students who are homeschooled can participate in multiple ways in the public school system.
Yeah.
In Connecticut, it's like this. This is homeschooling, and this is public education.
I understand that. I'm just
I
offering
hear
it
what you're
as
saying.
an opportunity to explore, and maybe even the state education department might be open to thinking about things like that.
Right, you're right, but it's a very different approach. Florida would permit kids to participate in athletics, and a number of other extracurriculars.
They can pick and choose which things they participate in and which things they don't.
Correct.
And I just think, you know, one can argue about the quality of some of the educational systems in some of the states like Alabama and Florida, where I've had grandkids attend, or actually not attend because their parents didn't want to go to the public schools. But then there's the involvement, which I say, you know, there's some benefit to that, and it might be worth at least some consideration, although it might be, as you point out, a long haul to get there. Thank you.
One other thing, I'm sorry.
Can we circle back around? This is an AP report, so if we could.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Stay on top.
I got off subject, sorry.
So let's keep it to the AP report, discussion of the AP report. Any other, Dr. Fieser?
I was just going to ask Mr. Scott if he could talk a little bit about, because I think there's people may not be aware of this, that while we offer 20 AP courses, in the eyes of colleges, they're kind of weighted differently, not in terms of scores, but in terms of how they view on a scale of rigor, they differ. So
yeah, absolutely. So one of the factors in the way colleges will rank students as a student applies to colleges by what they consider how difficult a course load the student undertook during their high school career. And when top-tier colleges look at that, they do not view courses with AP designations as being all the same. Some AP courses are definitively harder than other AP courses. And also some AP courses are more nationally recognized than others, and then some AP courses become designated as certain grade level AP courses. So for example, AP Human Geography, which you'll see in that first column up there, nationally, that exam is actually mostly taken by freshmen and sophomores. So that would be a course that would not be considered to be an extremely challenging course if it appeared on a student's transcript as a senior. So, that would be a situation where perhaps, if you're trying to get into Harvard, that might not be the right choice for your senior year. The courses that are considered most difficult kind of bring back to what I mentioned a little bit earlier about the state university system. Physics 2 and then the AP Calculus courses are considered to be the most difficult courses and considered to be the most challenging courses. For social studies, AP United States history and AP European history, along with AP economics, tend to be viewed as the more difficult AP courses. And then in the sciences, AP chemistry, AP biology, and AP physics tend to be designated as the more difficult AP courses. Which, for the vast majority of our students who are looking to go on to college, taking an AP course is something that's wonderful to have on your transcript, but it is important to note that not all AP courses are created equally in the eyes of colleges. So, taking AP Physics 2 is considered to be much more challenging than, say, taking AP Environmental Science.
Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a question on that. When you had said earlier the student may get a score of a 3 on an AP exam,
Yep.
doesn't count towards college credit at UConn.
Right.
Does it count in terms of strength of their application and getting into college?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So if a student takes an AP course, regardless of what their score is on that exam, in terms of their transcript, it is still weighted as an AP course. So taking AP biology, for example, still demonstrates that the student is willing to accept a challenging and rigorous course.
Okay.
Now, getting a 5 on AP biology exam versus getting a 2 on the AP biology exam may send a different message to the college, but students aren't required to report their AP scores to colleges when they apply.
Okay. Does a 3 show up as stronger than a 2?
Yes.
If they do report
absolutely.
it? Okay. A 3 is still better than a 2 or a 1,
Right. And some
even if you're
schools
not
will-
getting credit for it.
And some schools will even take a 3 under consideration for placement within a course catalog.
Mhm.
So some students may receive a more accelerated placement based on receiving a 3 in a course. They just won't receive credit.
Okay, I have a couple other follow-ups.
Sure.
To Ms. Krasinski's point earlier about the summer academy. In addition to looking and seeing how students do that participate in the academy, just a suggestion, you may want to ask for feedback from the students themselves. See if they found it useful or not.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Mr. Frank. He runs the AP boot camp, and I can certainly, he may even already collect that, but I can certainly reach out to him and find out. If not, how could we arrange to make sure that they're so easy to do now with Google surveys, so we can
Yes.
certainly do it pretty quickly.
Yes, yes. And another thing I think the results are fantastic. And I think it's a great story, especially the fact that we've increased the number of students and yet the percentage getting the passing scores are still right in the same area. So I think that's great. I think we just always need to be cautious about overload. So I hear stories anecdotally from students, taking quite a few AP courses, and I'm sure your teachers are hearing that as well. And a lot of times the students say that they don't want to take a level 2 course and have a lower weight in their GPA. There's no level 1 course available, so they take AP and they end up with 5 AP courses their senior year. And I hear that, and I think that gets tough. And I think we talked about this last year
We've had that,
too.
yes.
I don't
This is
wanna beat the
something-
dead horse, but.
This is something we're monitoring and that
Yeah.
we're taking a full look at our entire high school catalog to ensure that it's balanced, which includes the number of AP courses, the number of level 1 courses, et cetera. So that's something that we'll be working with the instructional supervisors and the building administration in the next few months to make sure that we are planning for both the decreasing enrollment and ensuring that we have enough variety for folks the students to take.
Okay.
That they're really meeting needs in addition to our new career pathways, et cetera. So there's lots of things that are happening that we have to take very careful look at over the next few months.
It's not easy.
Oh, it's a piece of cake.
Okay.
Brian's gonna do it.
And as a result of that conversation.
No, I mean, I realize there's a lot of,
Yep.
there's a lot of competing priorities,
Yes.
right? And
But we have
don't want anything to
introduced
suffer.
a level 1 co-talk course
Mhm.
that's running for the first time this year at both high schools, which is Honors Humanities, which will combine an ELA teacher and a social studies teacher in what I think is really going to be a very exciting course. I know that the teachers are extremely excited about teaching it. Hopefully the students will be nearly as excited about taking it. We had, I think, over 40 students sign up at Jonathan Law, and we have a section running over at Foreign as well. So we are trying to look at offering level 1 courses that are not AP courses. That way a student can choose to take something that's still rigorous and challenging, but doesn't have that hefty AP exam staring them down in May.
Okay, one last thing, I think on this last slide here,
Mhm.
you've raised a lot of intriguing questions.
Yep.
I think a lot of the right questions, and I think I'd just be curious to how you sort those out. So whether it's
Yeah, so
next year, 6 months from now, I just would like to hear, some
With
things
the
you come
one
up with.
that I mentioned about trends, obviously we'll look over a period of years, usually looking at about 3 years worth of data. For the one that I have up top, the first two, of correlation between AP scores and class grades, that's something that we've already started to have conversations with the teachers and with the principals, really just to kind of raise people's awareness of it, because sometimes these are things that happen that we're just kind of unaware of. So it is something that we've started to have some conversations about, and it's also something that we make sure that as instructional supervisors and as principals that we're hearing from the teachers as to factors that may be leading to that. So that's one thing that we've already started working on and making sure we're monitoring closely. In terms of the trend lines, like I said, that takes 3 years worth of data, so it's something that we will monitor every year.
Okay.
But we don't want to wait on that 4+ one, because where we did see a pretty significant drop, it's something we're starting the conversation about now, but we really won't have evidence of turning that trend around, at least for another year.
Right, okay.
Dr. Gregory?
Something you just said made me think about, is there a reduction in the duty or course load for a teacher teaching AP exams so that they have the time to score released items that are incredibly time consuming?
You mean to attend?
No,
Or to
I mean
actually
to embed
digest
released
their own?
items
Yeah.
in the coursework so students have a more accurate picture and the grade more accurately reflects future performance on the exam. Scoring those released items is cumbersome. And so I'm just wondering if that sort of
They were less of a
duty or something to.
No, and I'll tell you, I respect the work that AP teachers do, but we also have level 3 classes that require a tremendous amount of work too. So, in fairness to everybody who's working hard, they pretty much teach the same amount of classes. I did want to just add one thing.
Mm-hmm.
We do talk to students a lot. If the students taking 5 or 6 AP courses, we are worried about them too, because we want them to have a life, have fun. Many times they have their mind set that they really want to do it. We involve the parents. We try to be flexible and say, give it a shot. If you're not feeling up to it, you can always drop a course. But on the other hand, we have students that sometimes receive over a year's worth of college credit. So instead of the 4 years their parents have to pay for, they really don't have to pay for 3. And that's a major incentive too, for the student, for the family, and it's a wonderful achievement, but it does not come at a cost, and we're always kind of weighing that. So that's something I'm sure that Jonathan Law does also, because, you know, students' stress seems to be increasing, and we really don't want students to be too stressed out. We just want them to have healthy stress.
Mrs. Casey.
I know we're talking about AP classes and scores and the conversation around that, but we can't forget that our level 2 students also need to be challenged and given the same time and effort that those AP classes are, because those kids also go on to great colleges as well. So we need to keep that in mind. This is very important information, but I think we need to keep in mind that there are other kids taking other level classes as well, and I think that's just as important.
Other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is the enrollment report. Mr. Burt will be addressing that.
So coming around,
Hot off the press.
so the one in your packet was accurate as of, I believe, Thursday. The one that's coming around is accurate as of, 5 hours ago. Seems like not that long ago. So this is the most accurate, which, to be serious though, we are monitoring this on a daily basis, and we have been over the past month. And prior to that, it was a few times a week. But this has been an interesting year for a number of reasons. First and foremost has been, as you're obviously aware, the lack of a approved state budget, which is creating serious concern. If you've been paying attention in the news, different school districts have been taking various measures to try to address a potential loss in revenue to their towns and then subsequently supposedly to their school districts. We have not done that, but we are being conscious of that, and we are being more cautious than perhaps in the past. With that being said, we want to make sure that we're staying within the board guidelines, specifically at the elementary level. As you recall, we have 2 levels, K to 2 and 3 to 5. And just to kind of give you an overview, how we get to our original sections, as you recall, we begin working on the budget prior to the new year in December. And at that time, we create an estimate of population based on, we get a report from NASDAQ? From NASDAQ, which does our annual report every year. We get an estimate based on what they project both on live births and people moving into the district as best as possible. Predominantly, that has an impact on kindergarten. We also take a look at trends over time to see what the attrition rate is between 5th and 6th grade, as well as 8th to 9th grade. So based on those trend lines over the past 5 years, we do our best guess to put these numbers into the budget book, which again is printed and handed out in January. So the process for beginning our staffing happens 10 months ago to try to bring us to today. So that's when over the summer we take a close look. We work with both high school principals as well as Ms. Cianti over the course of the spring to take a look at enrollments in different courses. We make staffing decisions at that time at the secondary level, both at the middle and the high school level. But predominantly the most concerning aspect is elementary sections throughout the summer. And of course, kindergarten is always a guess. We can get a general understanding of what the live births were 4 or 5 years ago and what the estimate is, but we're not sure who's going to show up at our doorstep at any given moment for those kindergarten. We are lucky we do have a very large pre-K, and we can typically anticipate those students coming up into our program. But in essence, we try to do an ongoing basis and make determinations. We have in the past, as we do get some enrollments between now and through October as necessary, but this is obviously an extreme situation. If we see a particular class that's just growing and growing and growing because more and more students are moving into a particular school in a particular grade, we have made decisions in the past to add additional either teacher or a section. That is the exception, but that is something that we're closely monitoring. So I want to give you an overview here, just to give you a sense of where we were in terms of our estimate last year, again in January. Our estimate last year was 5,698. So if you take a look at that bottom number there, the district total enrollment was 5,698. I'll go back up to the total elementary, which is that first gray bar there. Our estimate was with pre-K it was 2,600. So you can see we're off by 28 there, about 1%. Total middle school, our estimate was 1,334. So we're off by 32 students in that regard. And then the high school was 1,764, so again about 28 additional students. The unique thing about this year, as opposed to our previous estimates, as well as the NESDEC estimates, is that we are slightly above. Last year, we were slightly below, and the year before that, we were slightly below, and the year before that, we were slightly below. So this is the first year, we worked on 3 years worth of trends to say, this is the estimate, and we again did our attrition rate between the different grades and how many kids are we moving from grade to grade. But this is interesting that this is the first year that we've seen a slight increase rather than a decrease. Just again, to give you an example, last year we anticipated 400 kindergartners joining us in the fall, in August, and we actually had 372, so we had 25 less students. This year, our estimate was about 378, and we're just slightly above that. So again, we're seeing a little bit of a trend up, but well within our guidelines of what we were anticipating, about a 1 to 2% difference of what we anticipated.
Questions? Mr. Jagosinski?
We had 2 schools last year that were elementary schools that were recognized because of their improvement in academics. One was Pumpkin Delight. What was the other school?
That was Orange Avenue.
Okay, Orange Avenue. One of my concerns was we've increased the class sizes at Pumpkin Delight significantly from the previous year. And my concern is that, was the improvements at Pumpkin Delight a result of the smaller class sizes? And are we going to see an erosion because we've now increased the size of the class sizes? Despite the improvement in those schools, they were still, toward the bottom of all of our schools. It wasn't that they had improved and, they were in the middle of the pack or above the pack. They were still down below. Are we, going to see some, is our progress going to be impeded because of the larger class sizes?
I can't definitively say, sitting here, that was the class sizes was the sole indicator that allowed for significant progress at Pumpkin Delight. I can tell you the things that I experienced personally, talking with Ms. Karamis, also talking with her team, and reporting out to our administrative team, that they did a tremendous effort really looking at the individual needs of each student. They had an entire team, school-based team, by grade, looking at the achievement of each student in math and reading, and looking, as do all of our elementary schools, they have a process where they get data in, they take a look at the students, and then they do what's called the SRBI process or SAT process, where in essence they identify the needs of those students and then they try to do interventions. It was really more about the united team effort, in my opinion, but again, that's my opinion sitting in this seat. I'm sure that there's a number of folks who would advocate that the lower class sizes, but we know that the greatest impact really is having a high quality teacher that has the right supports from a strong principal and a support staff that makes the biggest significant change in any individual student's life. That if you take solely that one indicator of class size, there's no effect difference over time. You have to have a number of different factors involved that do get those achievement increases.
I also think that it's a good question, but the Smarter Balance would have been third graders that would have taken the test, because K-1-2 doesn't take Smarter Balance. So if you look at Pumpkin, the number of fourth graders, for example, there's 44 students. That's probably what was there last year. So there would have been, I believe, 2 sections.
There were actually 3.
Were there
3? 42 students in 3 sections last year.
So I stand corrected there, but my point is that we over-projected students last year, so we had smaller class sizes than, quite honestly, we would have preferred, just from a budgetary perspective, and also in keeping with the board's guidelines around class sizes. So this year we were, much more cautious in as far as taking just monitoring literally from the spring on what was happening with class sizes throughout, so that we could just be more in line again with the board guidelines, but also, quite frankly, being mindful of we don't know what's going to happen with respect to the budget. That was it's just kind of hanging there.
Yeah, and I mean, we've gone basically from 16 to 20 average, roughly. And if that's not going to impact it, obviously I'd rather have 20 because, we save the money and, if we're not affecting the quality of education. My concern was, is class size going to make a difference? Based on what Mr. Bird is saying, hopefully not.
Well, and I think we could also probably look at individual classes and their performance, and we will see some classes that had 14 or 15 kids, and their students may not have done as well as a class that had 22 kids in it. So some of it comes right down to the classroom teacher. So we don't have an answer to that, but I'm not sure. I want to attribute it more to what's happening in that building with respect to the goals that have been set and the priorities by the principal and how they're going about whatever it is that they're targeting.
It is an interesting opportunity to see if class size does affect it.
So this is something that we did talk about a little bit at budget time back in January because, and it was explained to us at that time that there was some overprojection of class sizes. But I would note, for instance, last year, the kindergarten class at Pumpkin only had 30 students. So there was no choice but to make that 2 classes of 15.
Right.
There's 39 kids in the first grade right now. So, that right there alters the dynamics of how they would approach the sections. So there was quite a bit of that in some of the smaller schools where just the small number of the total grade affected the number of the size of the classroom simply because they had to put 2 teachers. The class was too big to put 1. So, but those class sizes have increased. So the first grade was 33 kids. The second grade here is 35. So the grades themselves are going up. The second grade was 40, and the third grade here is 45. So they're seeing an increase of students at that school, simply, too. Any other questions? Ms. Federico?
Just a comment, just to clarify on Mr. Jacketson's comment about the schools being recognized for academic improvement. That was Pumpkin and Orange Avenue.
Schools of distinction, yeah.
Okay.
The aspect exam.
Okay.
That was based, there's 2 factors that you could get on the list. One was strictly percentage of students at a particular achievement level. The other column was based on growth. And both those schools were based on their growth of their students. In other words, I think you remember vividly my report in January about the growth model from the state. But really it's about individual targets for students, regardless of your starting level, that did you make your target? And I believe that those were the 2 schools of maybe 10 schools in the state that really showed a significant number of students making that growth.
Okay.
And that's strictly from 3rd to 4th grade and 4th to 5th grade for those students because you see a year's growth.
Okay. And did that mean that Pumpkin and Orange Ave both were starting out at a low level of improvement, or they just had high growth?
Every student in the state gets a growth target.
Okay.
Every single student. Students, and it varies. Again, if you're at the top of the scale, you might have 20 points of growth because you're at the top. But if you're at the bottom of the scale, remember there's a 2,000 scale, if you might have 80 points of growth. So it's about, did you reach your growth, but also the percentage of that. If you got 79 points, you made 99% of your growth. So that's predominantly what the state is looking at. Not necessarily did you meet your cut score, did you make your 20 points growth, but how many of your students made 19 out of 20 or 15 out of 20. So they aggregate that whole piece together to give you the school a percentage or a particular grade percentage of how much growth did they get. That's really their emphasis at the state level has been on, because that's what's going to move kids. And if you look at their scale, they really have made sure that the students at the lowest part of the scale have to make the most growth to keep moving them up the scale, if you will.
Okay. So just want to be sure, we're not saying that these two schools were low in terms of improvement in any way. This doesn't mean that.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Questions, other questions? Dr. Gregory?
I am curious about some of the grades that are up at 23, 24. What's the plan if a couple more kids move in?
We would add a section. But we held off, and the reason that we held off is that because we know that there's fluctuation once school is underway, that there are families that come in and register their kids. I was in 2 schools today, and sure enough, there were families that showed up to register, and here they hadn't even gone online. You have to go online first to do the first part of it. So we held off, just waiting to see, you know, where is the fluctuation. I mean, one of the things, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, that we were most concerned about is the kindergarten. So the question was raised about, you know, so for example, Pumpkin had, 39 kids. You know, if 2-3 more kids register for kindergarten, we're going to add a section because that grade is so critical in terms of kids coming in. But we just held off. We were fearful that if we went ahead and added the teachers, and then an influx of kids came in, and then it's like, well, all right, we didn't plan for this, so where are we going to find the monies to pay for these extra teachers?
And it changes on a regular basis. At one point, Pumpkin, I believe, had 43 in their kindergarten, and we were taking a close look at that. But then the next day, it dropped, and then it dropped again, and we're now at 39. So the movement was tremendous within a couple weeks. That was also stopping us from making any hard and fast decisions. When we saw a trend that continued, then we were able to make more of a decision that way.
Mr. DeGrego?
Getting back to Pumpkin, I know several parents that whose children go to Pumpkin, and I'm telling you, I don't know what they're doing in that school, but I've seen a markedly improvement from parents have showed me the enthusiasm that they enjoy going to their school. I mean, their children, can't wait to go to school from a previous year. I don't know what's going on over there, but they're doing the right thing. I just want to say, that's from a personal experience, talking to parents.
They serve great Kool-Aid.
Other questions on this? All right, thank you so much.
The next item is the food service end of year financial report. Mrs. Beltran?
Scintillating information.
Good evening. This is the food service year-end report, and as you can see, we basically broke even, which is the goal. We don't try to earn a lot of extra money. Any money that we take in goes back into the program in food or equipment that we purchase. Does anyone have any questions?
Did the price of lunch go up this year?
Yes, it
Or
did.
meals, I should say?
Meals. Yes, it did. It went up 10 cents at each grade level. And that is a nominal increase in order to pay for some increases in food and labor that we have, and as well as wanting to, one of the things we want to do is be able to purchase some additional produce and different varieties that we haven't in the past. So that's what we're going to use the money for. But it's just 10 cents per meal.
Mr. Whiskeyman?
Was there could you highlight any significant differences in the array of foods offered this year versus last year? Was it pretty much the same, or was there a number of nutritional changes?
In terms of regulations? Or in terms
regulations
of
and our offerings.
we constantly work to change the menu in order to make it more interesting and more appealing and attract more students to purchase meals. One of the things we want to do is add more local produce and a variety. We were buying most of our produce through the commodity program, which is the Department of Defense, where we can use commodity dollars for that, but we were a little bit limited in what we can purchase, so I want to expand that. Last year, I thought our choices were fewer than in the past, so we have to buy it on the open market and then we have more choice, but it does cost a little more, so that's why we felt as though we needed a little bit more money to work with.
I noticed that, if I'm reading this correctly, you ended with $676 out of $2 million? That's like,
Pretty much $3 million.
That's like hitting the end of a pencil from here across the room. That's like,
Yes.
at
We
first
count our
read.
pennies. We count all our pennies. They add up to dollars.
Wow.
Any other questions for Mrs. Faustich?
I did speak to my granddaughter in the 3rd grade, and she thinks the pizza could use some work.
Well, there's different things coming. Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
So the next item on the agenda are some policies that we're bringing forward. We have 3 policies that are being brought forward for a first reading. The first one has to do with student records and confidentiality. And you have the policy there. It's a replacement for the existing policy, which had been written in 1994. Well, actually, it was yes, 1994. So it was dated. There is a detailed administrative regulation that accompanies this as well. But this is something that's really important, and Carol Swift could probably speak to this far more than I, but the idea of record keeping, confidentiality, how long we keep records, how they get stored, et cetera, is all dictated by law. And it's something that we're very, very conscious of. And also the idea of communicating with parents, what are their rights, and again, what is stored, what is kept, what is not kept. One of the things that we did make sure, again, the AR is not here, but we wanted to make sure that any reference to directory assistance correlated with what we just passed as the new policy on directory assistance, and as far as what things would be released under directory assistance, and and then also military access to records. So that's what this one has to do with. We'd be glad to answer any questions that folks may have.
Mr. Jagosinski?
Comment, where it says, like in point 2, permitting parents, I think it should say parents/guardians. And in some cases it says parents/guardians, in other cases it doesn't. So if someone could just go through that.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions on this? Mrs. Federico?
Just a quick question, the process for annually informing parents of their rights, is that something that's happening now?
It is.
Is that like a standard?
It's in the,
procedure?
there's a reference to it in the, I believe, in the student handbook.
Okay.
And then also with respect to what can get released, for example, for directory information, parents have to sign off on that, or if they want to opt out.
Okay.
And then, if, for example, any kind of student records are going to be reviewed by anybody outside of the school system, and the people who would normally review it, that all is in writing, that parents would have to give permission.
Okay.
Carol, you could speak to that more in terms of, when people are examining student records.
Parents have to sign off on a transfer of confidential records before anything can go to anyone. So
Okay.
it's something that all of our school staff knows, and
Okay, no, I was looking for if there was some kind of annual notification, like your bank sends you, this is our privacy.
It's all in the
This is
handbook.
not-
That's-
it's in the handbook.
Most of that stuff is in the
Makes
student
sense.
handbook that goes home.
Yep, okay.
Once a year.
Makes sense.
Any other questions on this policy? First reading, so it'll come back next business meeting.
So the next policy is on weapons and dangerous instruments. And to be honest with you, this also is replacing an existing policy which was written in 1994. We actually were going to not include this simply because this is all included in other policies that you've already passed. But lo and behold, when we checked it against what's mandated by law, this is mandated by law. So, if you read this, a lot of this information you've seen before in other policies, but it's being brought forward to you because it is required under the law.
So did you compare it to the other policy in terms of consistency?
We did. We looked at the suspension, and so you see on the suspension and expulsion reference here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, we actually looked at the definitions and some of the other language pieces that are in here.
So on the, I had two things in this one, and they're really just clarity things. So the last paragraph on the first page, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse when you say that the possession or use of any such weapon or devices will require that the proceedings for suspension and or expulsion will be initiated immediately by the principal. That's being stated before it's even stated further down in the paragraph that it requires expulsion. So I'm wondering if that could just be reversed in terms of its placement. Does that make sense?
Which piece do you want reversed?
Well, I think you probably should state first that if a student is found to have possessed a firearm, they must be expelled.
Right.
And then you state that the possession will require the proceedings to begin immediately.
I gotcha. Okay.
And then on the second page, I'm wondering, it says the board shall consider students' conduct off school grounds. So the board itself, we are not involved in that.
So it's the hearing officer, right. Actually, this would be the superintendent, I would think.
Okay, so.
Because it's grounds for expulsion, so then we would bring it forward to the hearing officer.
Right, because the board, we don't hear those, and we don't make those decisions.
The only thing that I would say with this, when they talk about the board, see, this is the language from the state, because the state isn't gonna make a distinction between the board and superintendent. This is mandated policy that boards of education have to have. So basically what they're just simply saying is that the board can consider a student's conduct off school grounds. In other words, as part of the policy.
Oh, okay.
But everything is when we carry out the policy, it's the superintendent who's carrying out the policy.
All right. Okay.
So, I mean, I could say the board and or superintendent, or superintendent.
Do you want to check with legal counsel and see if they have a problem with that?
Sure.
Yes, Dr. Gregory.
In the legal reference on page 202, there's weird underlining scattered throughout on that page. And so perhaps they're hyperlinks, perhaps they're not, I don't know.
With respect to the legal references?
In the legal references.
Oh, like underlining the 10s, for instance?
In the 53, so it's not in the other documents.
Right,
And so.
You see that? Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. So again, this is another first reading.
And the next policy, you may have been a little surprised at seeing this because this is a 4,000 policy, which is really personnel. But because you just passed the student policy on sexual discrimination and sexual harassment, we thought it was important to bring forward the policy relative to personnel. And again, what we did was we made sure that there was, comparability in some of the language pieces. And this policy that's being brought forward, some of the policy that was in place in 2012, that's the last time it was brought forward, remains, but there's some additional language here. And some changes in some additions to the legal references.
Mr. Jagosinski?
Yep. In the second paragraph, second sentence, in the absence of a victim's complaint, the first comma is inappropriate, but it says the board upon learning of. Should that be instead the superintendent?
Mhm. I had a few instances of that type of thing in this policy that I wanted to ask about. Sure. Is that it, Mr. Jagosinski, for you? So in the first paragraph, I guess I question it because it's stating that this applies to the Board of Education members as well as volunteers or non-school personnel. In that first paragraph, there's reference to that twice. So this is it's a personnel policy, so I'm questioning why it references Board of Ed or members or other volunteers or non-school personnel. And that was in the original policy, I realize.
So the piece on the Board of Education was a piece that was in 2012 that was asked to be inserted into the policy. We were at when I came.
Okay. Yes, it's all. Well, I don't remember specifically, but I can understand perhaps why it was asked to put in. Right.
I
I think
maybe,
there was an issue.
maybe,
There was an issue back
okay.
then.
Maybe I can offer it's members of the Board of Education interacting with employees, right? I mean, that's what the sentence
Correct.
is
Right.
about. So,
Correct. Okay.
so it still relates to employees.
Well, yes. Okay. That's.
Because it's
makes
in the
sense.
workplace.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay. All right, that explains it. Thank you. That does make more sense. And then in the red paragraph, so some of the red seems to be redundant with the last paragraph in black on page 2. So the first thing when I was reading the first sentence, any employee who believes that he or she has been subjected to sexual harassment should report the alleged misconduct immediately. It doesn't say to whom it should be reported to. But then as I read further, it does say that it should be reported to the Title IX coordinator, the superintendent, or his or her designee. So I'm wondering if maybe that could be reworked a little bit to put it up above as well. And just look at those two paragraphs I guess the last paragraph in black on page 2 does have a lot of additional information in it. But that was one thing that stood out to me, because I said, who are they supposed to be reported to? So I think that should be stated at the beginning of the policy.
Some of this has to do with someone doesn't report it, someone doesn't come forward, but say, for example, I become aware of it, I hear, some complaints, are coming forward, for example, in a particular building, between individuals, that I have an obligation, even though it has not been brought to me, I have an obligation then to investigate that. So that second sentence, in the absence of the victim's complaint, the superintendent upon learning of or having reason to suspect, or if Wendy Kapazna were to receive information, et cetera, we have an absolute obligation to pursue that, even though the victims has not come forward.
Yeah, that I get, but the first sentence of that paragraph, any employee who believes that he or she has been subjected to sexual harassment should report the alleged misconduct immediately so that appropriate corrective action may be taken at once. So who are they supposed to report it to?
Right, so we can
That's
say,
my
right, the Title IX coordinator,
Okay.
et cetera.
All right, thank you. That's all I had on that. Any other questions from Mr. Pagidorn?
In the red part there where it says superintendent of schools directly develop, do you have procedures for reporting and investigating, or are you going to be doing that?
We do have procedures in place, and one of the things we just met the other day, just to kind of look again at the forms that, would be used in a school for conducting an investigation, or if it was brought up to this level. you know, and making sure that the forms are up to, again, they're only at this point 5 years old, but to see is there anything that's better. But yes, we do have procedures in
Okay.
place.
Just want to make sure it's
Yep.
added in there.
No, it's a good question.
Any other questions?
And then the second, the last policy that we're, just make it a little more easily understood by the public, and streamline it some, move some of the language into the regulations, et cetera. So we think we did that. You also asked us to add to the goals, particularly under physical education, which that has, you know, some more goals have been addressed. And so what you see is what we took out of the policy, and then some of the new language that we put into it.
This reads much better, in my opinion. It reads much better than the other one did. Any questions on this? This is the second reading, so we are going to vote on it tonight if nobody has any objections. Seeing none, on the motion, Mr. Bias?
Yep, I have a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves policy P 6142.101 student wellness.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion, any further discussion?
Just
Yes.
a quick question. The policy that we're looking at, does it change anything we're currently doing in the school system? Or does it simply restate what we're currently doing?
Mrs. Felchers, can you address that question?
Yes, the policy states what's currently being.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then we move on to the human resources report, Mrs. Capazza?
Keep you all awake here. You have the report, which lists our job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend payments. I do want to point out a few things. As you can see from the report of personnel recommendations, there are quite a few people on here. I wanted to just touch base with you, since it is the first day of school, about our teacher hires, and let you know the final number as of today, because we did hire somebody today. We have 31 new teachers, representing 17 different certification areas. We have recalled all of the teachers and paraprofessionals that were unfortunately laid off at the end of June, so they've all come back to work. They've all accepted our recall. The open job list, you can see that we are still looking for a .75 FTE library media specialist. That's our only unfilled teacher position at this point. And there's an update, because this report, of course, was done, I think, last Wednesday. And then after the report was done, we had one resignation and one retirement come in, both from social studies, one at each high school. So it's really just a random thing, but we were able to get the posting right up. And actually, I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Scott is doing interviews with the two principals tomorrow and Wednesday for those two social studies openings. And social studies happens to be an area has an abundancy of applicants right now, so we're in good shape there, I think. That's it.
Mr. Jagosinski?
I'm very happy to see we don't have any classes that don't have their permanent teacher, which was not true last year. I think that's terrific.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Gregory?
I did have a little question. I thought I saw two like .5 positions that were the same position. Now I can't find it.
That were open currently?
Yes.
One of them was a speech and language pathologist. That's who we filled today. We filled that position today. And then, let's see, I think probably the .75 library media specialist, which we had a long-term sub for.
I see.
Is there another one?
Two in a
There's
row.
two in a row, but one of them's an anticipated opening. Oh, no, they both say anticipated.
Right.
August 18th.
Oh, one's a sub.
Yeah, one's a sub,
One's a
and then
long-term sub. and one's-
speech and language we did fill, but actually August 14th, .5 special education pre-K teacher, we filled that. So that was probably the one you were looking at.
Yeah, they were both the same, the August 18th. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
And the last report is the disbursement report. Mr. Ricciatelli?
Yep. In your package, you have the list of all of the disbursements over $1,500 that we made in the month of July, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mrs. Krasinski?
I just have one.
Sure.
It's not really, but it made me think of this. The solar panels, did those go in this
Not
summer?
yet.
Okay.
No, we're still, we had planned to do them
Because
over the
I saw the
summer.
line item here, and that's what
Yeah.
made me think of it.
We had planned to do them over the summer, but
Right.
we're still in the contract stage. A complicating factor, although we're gonna get past it, is our current electric supplier. We have a 3-year contract with them. It was bid, and we had a 3-year contract in place. When we put solar up, we're buying less from that contractor.
Right.
So the contractor objected to it, which they have the right to do under the contract, and we have to negotiate with them. So we're working through those details, but that's the reason why solar's not up yet, but it's still moving forward.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
We have nothing else.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Bias?
Yeah, I have a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda items, consideration of minutes from July 10th, 2017 at our business meeting, and July 24th, 2017 at our special meeting.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have no new business tonight. Board comment. Mrs. Krasinski.
It's actually as a parent rather than a board member, but the new student handbook is excellent. It was great to read, just one, and it was much more concise, and I like the fact that there's one for the whole district rather than 3 separate ones.
It's great to hear. I know that Mr. Burt worked with Kathy Benetti, but Kathy Benetti really does that. That's one of her major projects over the summer, and so they merged the two.
It was great.